All right, good afternoon, folks from Gura, and to my colleagues that have joined us this afternoon. The Committee on General Government Operation, Appropriation, and Housing will convene this round table. Is now called to order. Today is Monday, September 28, 2020, and the time now is 2 o'clock. Today we'll be conducting this roundtable with the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority. I'd like to welcome everyone connected by Zoom and those tuning in via television or the YouTube channel. Thank you for your patience in accommodating the Zoom platform while we maintain healthy emergency physical distancing mandates. Notice for this roundtable were disseminated via email to all senators and all main media broadcasting outlets on Monday, September 21st, and then on Thursday, September 24th. General rules of conduct for this virtual meeting. This Zoom meeting is hosted by my staff and will mute all Zoom participants until called upon. Members of the committee and or legislature wishing to speak may indicate their desires through the in-app chat feature. Individuals from the department shall first be recognized before speaking and begin by stating your name for record keeping purposes. When called to speak, please ensure that you are unmuted. Committee members will be allowed to pose questions to an individual from the department for a round and will be provided another round if needed. We might move to the question and testimony shall be confined to the substance or nature of the agenda. Personal inference as to the character or motive of any senator or any individual testifying is not permitted. Any violation of this general rule or of conduct will result in removal from the platform by the host. Please be forewarned. Any inference, we will remove you from the platform. Please ensure that your video remains on throughout the meeting. Virtual backgrounds are not permitted. Participants must be visible at all times and not engage in any other activity during the hearing. Failure to maintain visibility may cause your removal from the meeting live stream. If you need to take a drink, feel free and feel comfortable. The agenda item, the committee seeks to discuss issues relative to, but not limited to, the following: fiscal year 2019 audit report, corrective actions on deficiencies identified, COVID-19 mortgage and rent relief programs, federally funded programs to prevent and combat homelessness, and government assisted living facilities. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues that have joined me this afternoon, and I have, looking at the screen, I see Senator Regine Besco Lee, I see Senator Kelly Mars Taitnu, Senator Tello Taitagui, Senator Will Castro, Senator Jim Moylan, Senator Sabina Perez. I hope I did. Oh, Senator Amanda Shelton, ma'am, I noticed you on the bottom. Thank you, ma'am, for joining. I'd like to also recognize with us from Gura, we have Mr. Ray Tapasa, the director, and Ms. Napoli. I think you're there. I'm trying to. Oh, there you go. The deputy director. We also have the chairman of the Gura board, Sabino Flores, sir. We have Monica Guzman, one of the commissioners, and George Pereda. Am I correct? Is there anybody else that I missed? Joe out there or Ray? Did you see anybody, any other commissioners present, or is it just the three?
I believe someone else is trying to get in. One of the other commissioners.
Okay. Okay. As soon as they get on, then we'll recognize them as we move along. Okay. We will first begin with Ray. We're going to go ahead and start with the agenda, and we'll just I would ask the Gura folks, yourself and the board chair, if you can just walk us through the agenda. We'll go 1 to 4. Okay, on the agenda, and then I'll ask a few questions, and I'll open it up to my colleagues to ask questions. All right?
Sir, if I may.
Yes, sir.
Please. I have a PowerPoint presentation, and so does HR. Maybe we can start with that, then we can go through the questions, because it would answer a lot of the questions if you allow us to present first.
Yes, sir. Yes, I will allow you to present first. All
okay.
Right? Please continue.
Okay, may I start?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, can everyone see this? Is it showing up on your side, sir?
You're good, Mr. Director, you're good.
Okay, thank you. Okay, this is a more condensed version of what I presented to the board on Friday at the board meeting, because that one took quite a long time, I believe half an hour or longer, but this one will be, I tested it just before lunch and it was no more than 8 minutes if I go through it real quickly. So basically, I wanted to start with something for all of us to mull over. In comparison, GURA's operating budget, operating and admin budget, which was just approved last Friday by the board, is approximately $81.2 million. In comparison, Seattle, Washington's Housing Authority, $101.3 million. Durham, North Carolina, about $40.2 million. El Paso, Texas, $70.8 million. Santa Clara, California Housing Authority, $10.8 million. LA County Housing Authority, $33.3 million. And our sister agency, the Guam Housing Corp., their operating budget, which was just passed Friday as well, or I believe Thursday, is $3.2 million. If you were to compare us to our sister autonomous agencies, the Port Authority just passed their operating budget of $47.8 million, of which 67% is personnel costs. The airport pre-COVID, 13% of their operating budget was personnel costs. I would presume COVID and post-COVID, it's probably something that we wouldn't even want to talk about. However, GURA's operating budget, which was passed at $81.2 million, only $9.2 million of that is for personnel. And if you take into account pass-through funding and LIHTC, only 6.6% is personnel. So, I mean, that's something I want everyone to think about as I present today. Some of the misinformation in the media, I really need to talk about it because that's why we're here today. A statement that GURA faces the risk of being placed under federal receivership or third-party financial oversight. Well, that's news to me, and that's news to the 100 plus employees that work here. I can't speak to whether there were any discussions in the past. I'm just going to say today, I've spoken to HUD officials. I speak to them almost weekly. We have Friday teleconferences, and we have constant communication via email. I reached out to 3 of them. 2 of them responded saying they're not aware of any discussions pertaining to federal receivership. Next item, HUD gave rave reviews of GURA's performance at a meeting with the Lieutenant Governor in late 2019. So less than a year ago, the Lieutenant Governor had discussions with HUD at the highest levels in DC, and they had good things to say about us. Third item, GURA consistently receives clean opinions on our annual financial statements. What that basically means is the numbers add up. So there isn't any missing money, there isn't any malfeasance. We wouldn't have a clean opinion on our financial statements if there was. The next item on the next bullet point, GURA received passing grades with our public housing and Guma Tranquilidad programs. We scored at 80 points out of 100 in our last REACT inspection. We had a $7 million increase in our Section 8 budget. That's from $30 to $37 million. We have approximately $8 million in CARES Act funding as a result of COVID. We're at the verge, very close, probably within the next 2 weeks, of closing out a loan guarantee with HUD to build a new charter school, and that's about $12 million. And we, in our operating budget that was just passed Friday, we went from $81.2 million from $69 million the prior fiscal year. So, I mean, are those signs of a housing authority that's going under receivership? I beg to differ. The next item is the board, or that's been stated in the media, the board ignored fiscal year 19 audit findings by ratifying salary increments. For the record, and I will put my reputation on the line, this is the best audit we've received in 3 decades, and this is a statement that actually came from our controller. We received an unmodified opinion on our financial statements, once again, which means the numbers all add up. There isn't even a penny missing. We received unmodified opinions, and those are clean opinions on compliance on 4 of our 6 major programs. And if I can talk about last year's audit, we received a modified opinion on 3 of 4 programs that they audited. And in FY17, we received modified opinions on 4 of 4 major programs that were audited. In essence, we didn't have clean audits on any of those programs. As well, for this audit, we implemented corrective action on 24 of 26 prior year audit findings, which means there were 26 audit findings when we walked into this organization. 20 of them, we already implemented corrective action. 2 of them, the 2 pending, 1 required no further action. The last one is the reconciliation process is ongoing. It's going to take a lot longer than the 3-week timeline that the governor had given us. So that process is ongoing. We expect to finish that shortly. The next item is question costs of $7,000. Keep this in mind. $7,000 amounts to about 0.01%, 0.010% of our total operating budget. So it's negligible. I mean, it's pennies, but nonetheless, there are question costs. We want to correct that. The independent auditors who presented to the board at the August 14th board meeting, and this is not me presenting, this is the independent auditors. Those are the ones that actually looked at our books and reviewed our books. These are their statements. Although there are some issues, as there are with every audit, the FY19 audit is the best in years. The next statement when they presented to the board is prior audits before our watch did not conform to accounting requirements. Well, that's not our fault. From another statement from the independent auditors, from a federal government standpoint, the audit showed defined improvements. Again, those are statements coming from Deloitte and Touche. Lastly, they told the board, they compared GURA's audit to performing 7 audits of autonomous agencies. So that kind of gives you an idea of how complex and cumbersome the GURA audits are. There's a lot of talk about, well, we're late, well, we didn't do this, well, we didn't do that. It's not as easy as most people would think if the auditors are saying, if the auditors are comparing us to audits of 7 autonomous agencies. The next item is the board must use audit findings against the executive director and deputy director in their evaluation. For the record, our performance evaluation period is January 2019 through January 2020. The FY audit wasn't even completed till August 2020, so that's about 8 months after the evaluation period. The audit period covers October 2018 through September 2019, so the 2 periods don't even coincide. And lastly, only 3/4 of the FY19 audit actually fell under my oversight and the deputy's oversight. So it's, a lot of misstatements or misinformation in the media. We didn't even oversee 1/4 of that period. So I just wanted to put that out there. More statements in the media that the board must rescind pay raises. There's a lot of statements from elected officials. Well, the board did not approve any pay raise, but rather they ratified salary increments which are tied to performance in accordance with GURA's personnel rules and regulations. In my opinion, and in the opinion of our human resources expert who will be presenting later, rescinding a salary increment for any employee who received a rating of satisfactory or better would violate GURA's personnel rules and regs and compensation plan. Please keep in mind that the personnel rules and regs and comp plan were filed with the Guam legislature back in 2011. That was when I was here. And it went through 3 separate public hearings. And then once again, it was filed with the Guam legislature in 2013. And once again, it underwent public hearings. There was an audit that was released just recently in the last few days, I believe, Thursday evening. It was the audit of unclassified positions at GURA, which we will talk about more in detail later. But basically, it reflected no findings by the current board. So for anyone to suggest that we need to rescind raises, given the fact that the board, an audit reflected that there were no findings by the current board, is quite troubling for me. The next item is GURA management and board did not disclose that the board was going to ratify personnel actions at the last board meeting. Well, during our exit interview, and there were 4 of us present from GURA, myself, the chairman, the deputy director, and our HR manager. We all agreed, and I requested of the others present at the Zoom conference that we were only going to clarify 2 items that were potential findings involving the current administration. We didn't want to talk about anyone else, or we didn't want to talk about anything else. There were no objections. So the only thing we discussed during that Zoom conference was the 2 items which we clarified, which were taken out as findings after clarification. So to suggest that there was something sinister or somebody somebody failed to disclose anything, that's not a factual statement. We made it clear from the beginning, we only wanted to talk about the 2 items. It was agreed upon. Well, I wouldn't say it was agreed upon, but there were no objections. In addition, HR did show copies of personnel actions, the last bullet point here, to OPA staff even prior to media reports coming out. So to suggest that we're not being transparent when the personnel actions were actually provided to or shown to is, again, very troubling. More misinformation. GURA's lack of timely completion of its audited financial statements adversely impacted completion and issuance of the GovGuam financial statements. Well, GovGuam's deadline is March 31st. HUD's deadline is December 31st. We are 100% federally funded. We actually completed the audit 4 months ahead of HUD's schedule. So we may be one of the first housing authorities to complete it. HUD extended the deadline to December 31st simply because of COVID. So we're way ahead of schedule. GURA is in fact working with our independent auditors to complete the FY20 audit by March 31st, 2021 in order to comply with Guam's deadline. I assure the entire Guam legislature and the governor and lieutenant governor that we will meet that deadline. We are working on it. There aren't any delays. Even under PCOR 1, we believe we will complete it by March 31st. Let me talk about the PCOR 1 restrictions because this is very important. The audit was not considered an essential function. Liz and I will attest that we discussed during cabinet meetings with the governor whether we can bring back some of our non-essential functions because we were gravely concerned about the timing of the audit and we could not get approval. Keep in mind, the governor was more worried about the virus getting out of control, which it has. The governor was worried about, we didn't know too much at the time about COVID-19 and we're still learning, and today we're still learning. But we could not get approval to move forward with non-essential functions, which included the audit. For the record, not all work can be telework per HUD guidelines or HUD regulations. So, there were suggestions that, well, why don't you take the work home? Well, where we can telework, we're teleworking, and where we can't, we cannot. There are certain files that cannot be removed from the premises. And so it's not as if the auditors can just grab all the records, take it home and audit. Keep in mind, I am not auditing, the deputy isn't auditing, and neither is our accounting staff. The auditors are the ones auditing the records. The next item is the procurement process, and the transition from the old to new independent auditors played a key role in the audit being late. The procurement process is not something I can control simply because we were told that we could not renew the independent auditor's contract for another year. There was an option to extend, And instead, we have to go out and request for proposal. That request for proposal requires, as part of the evaluation or selection committee, for those to be appointed outside of GURA. I can't tell other entities that they need to appoint today, and because I don't control other entities. The transition from the old to the new was problematic. There was an option to extend. Of course, I'm sure the old auditor was not very happy that we did not renew. And so there was challenges in getting certain documents. You would think that the transition would be easy. It wasn't. The lack of accounting personnel, we agree. That was told to us that's told to us in every audit. GURA is not, but the independent auditors did, when they presented it to the board, they did say that it's difficult to fill these positions. It's even more difficult to fill these positions at GURA, simply because, as the independent auditor said, auditing GURA was like auditing 7 autonomous agencies. If you were to do the math, I would presume that we have 7 times more work, at least in our fiscal department. One statement that came out repeatedly in the media is that GovGuam's financial health should not be put at risk by a single director. Given everything I just said earlier, I really wish all the blame wouldn't be put on my shoulders. There's a lot of things that are outside of my control. Next item is and this was reported in one of the media outlets, other FY audit issues. Failure to properly account for $100,000. We needed more time to reconcile these records. The money's not missing. It gives the impression that there's 100,000 that we can't account for. We can account for it. We just couldn't account for it within the 3-week timeline that the governor had given us to complete the audit. Not properly recording 4 properties worth $706,000. GURA's home buyer acquisition and rehab program. It's basically a program where we buy a home that's in dilapidated state. We rehabilitate it. We turn around and sell it to an income qualified homeowner. We were never told in previous audits or by previous auditors that we had to report these assets if we held on to it for over a year. Sometimes when we purchase a piece of property, the construction may take longer than we'd like. If we held on to it for a year, then we needed to report it as an asset. Well, that's news to us. So now we are recording it as an asset. But in practicality, why would we want, if we held on to it for 12 months, we're going to report it as an asset and then sell it off. And when it's 13 months, that means we have to remove it as an asset. So, but fine, if that's what we have to do, then that's all we have to do. We didn't know that prior to this audit. The next item is overstating $4.5 million in deferred revenue. That was reported in the media. This was adjusted even before the FY19 audit was released. This, to me, this is a non-issue. But again, going from an old audit, independent auditor to a new auditor, we're finding a lot of things out that we didn't know before. And so I'm not going to point blame at any of my certified public accountants that work here. If we need to correct it, we've corrected it. The other thing that was reported, not properly recording $539,000 in assets and $941,000 in liabilities. These are long-standing accounts. It is recorded and it is shown in our FY19 audit. And the controller showed it to me herself. What the auditors did recommend is that management review and determine if these items are no longer valid. So it's just as simple as for me to decide, do we still want that to be reflected in the audit? There's no malfeasance, there's no intent to try and disguise the fact that there's $539,000 in assets and $941,000 in liabilities. The bottom line is we received an unmodified opinion once again on our financial statements for FY19. So, you know, we can debate all these different issues, but the bottom line is, and this is what really HUD is concerned about, is do you have a clean opinion? And the opinion was clean. In conclusion, is HUD considering receivership over GURA's operations? As I said earlier, we are told they're not even aware of this. I can't speak to if that was the case in previous administrations. Was the FY19 audit as bad as we reported in the press? We respectfully disagree. We believe it to be the best one to date. We are working to ensure that the FY20 audit is completed by March 31st, 2021. While nothing is perfect and my accounting staff are not perfect and they're understaffed, GORA does have 3 full-time certified public accountants. For the record, every media report that came out criticizing our audit and criticizing our operations did not come from a certified public accountant. The controller puts her certification on the line each time she signs alongside myself. The FY21 budget that was approved by the board on Friday includes additional accounting personnel. Did the board or executive management do anything wrong? I am confident that the board, under the leadership of the current chairman, has been exercising its fiduciary oversight in the best interest of the U.S. taxpayer and the local families that we serve, and that's 4,882 families. The board's actions fully comply with GORA's personnel rules and regs and compensation plan. And that concludes my presentation, sir. And if I can request that our HR administrator do a short brief, and it would answer a lot of your questions before, so that you know, we don't have to take too much time in going back and forth.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray. I'd like to first recognize my other colleagues. I apologize, Senator Luis Munoz. I didn't notice you there in the middle. Thank you for joining us. And we were also joined by Senator Therese Terlai. I'm looking to make sure I didn't miss any other my colleagues. Ray, go ahead and have your HR folks go ahead and do their briefing before I ask any questions.
Go ahead, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Director Tapasna. Good afternoon, Senator San Agustin, and honorable members of the Guam Legislature, our GORA board, and our Team GORA. I am Kimberly Kowalski-Berseman, the Personnel Services Administrator for GORA since 2002. I am blessed to hold a doctorate in business administration with a specialty in human resources. I also maintain 2 national certifications in the HR field. One as a senior professional in human resources, also known for short as an SPHR, and the second one as a senior certified professional with the Society for Human Resources Management. So as an HR practitioner, we need to walk the straight and narrow, and that's how it always should be, especially in HR. But before I start, can I just give a quick shout out to my 10-year-old nephew, Caleb Matthew, who insisted on watching this proceeding live. He's at my house using my internet for his DOE classes. So Caleb, if you're watching, hi. Now off with the TV, back to the Zoom or your homework. Auntie Kimmy is already nervous as it is. Thank you. So folks, there you have one of your Guam future leaders. But back to your question, Mr. Chairman, on why the OPA found inconsistencies with the ratification of the pay adjustments. I would like to start off with some background. On the night of September 3rd, the draft OPA report came out. By the very next day, executive management's approach was to look in a forward manner, being very positive and only address items in the report that occurred on their watch, and to be open for any room for improvements, which is really admirable, especially for accountability purposes. But unfortunately, we do have to look back at the former administration, and it is by no means derogatory. It is important because it not only lays out the foundation, it has become now the crux of the issue. So with all due respect to the OPA, there were several undefined terms being thrown around or used interchangeably, but this is the situation. Hold on. What? Turning. Hi, okay. Thank you. So again, this is the situation. On page 8 of the OPA final report, table number 1 points out inconsistencies, but it is really not. There are really two different things between a pay adjustment and a salary increment. In table 1, line 1 represents a pay adjustment approved by the Board of Commissioners. A pay adjustment is defined as a modification of an employee's pay within a pay grade, while the remaining 5 entries in table 1 represents a performance evaluation which was processed as a salary increment in accordance with our personal rules and regulations. By definition, a salary increment is defined as a periodic step increase in salary for performance. So for illustration purposes, let me walk you through what a pay adjustment personal action looks like. Okay, so for illustration purposes, there's the sample, the name, John Doe Cruz. Number 4 is the nature of the action, the effective date, and box 6 is the legal authority. So what are the examples when personal adjustment, pay adjustment actions are processed? 1, it is when we use it to correct an executive pay step, or 2, to shift or convert an employee to the new pay schedule. And the effective date is the date the board approves, which in terms, the auditor refers to it as ratification, which they left out in their report, but you can find it in part 2 of the Port Authority footnote. Okay, so that's a pay adjustment action. Now, for illustration purposes, a salary increment looks like this. So as you can see, John Doe Cruz again. Even the forms are different. Okay, so look at the examples of when it's used. I have a big star there, and I like to bring to your attention it's specifically for salary increment actions as required by our personal rules and regulations 7.008, inclusive of classified, unclassified, and exempt positions. So what are the factors that drive this? Number 1, when an eligible employee under our pay for performance plan receives a rating of marginal, satisfactory, better than, highly stat, or outstanding. And number 2, the effective date is the employee's anniversary due date. So as you can see in this John Doe Cruz, we have Jane Doe would sign as the chairman of the board. So you say, yay, G.I. Jane as the chairman of the board, women's power there. So in my illustration, that will be an example of how we consistently process a notification of personal action. So as you can see between the two, even the forms are different. But I have to say, not one question was ever asked by the auditors, how do you account for that? But okay, so in actuality, we are really not inconsistent, but we are rather consistent in how and when pay adjustments are transacted and how and when salary increments are processed. So let me fast forward to when the transition of power took place in January 2019 with the new administration. So pursuant to our personal rules and regs, executive management's performance rating period is for January 2019 to January 2020. Yes, we acknowledge there were both administrative, and COVID reasons that delayed implementation of the performance evaluation on time back to their January 2020 anniversary date. But like we all know, salary increments for the most part are processed after the employee's anniversary date. As much as HR tries and tries, you're always going to have some sort of lag time, coupled with administrative delays, supervisory neglect, and to no fault of the employee. So to say it is illegal to retro back to the employee's anniversary due date definitely needs to be clarified, as it impacts how salary increments are processed in the government is of concern. So Mr. Chairman, members of the legislature, respectfully, since the OPA asked the AG to opine on this matter, I think it's prudent moving forward that we handle this in a professional fashion by us packaging the documents for the AG to review, for their review and assessment of the facts. This way, it's all in writing and Gura can respond appropriately. And we just got to see how it all works out. But I hope this short presentation is a better understanding and not too technical. Like I said, I really tried to do it this way. Okay, and then finally on a salary increment, I forgot to note that salary increments are budgeted and approved by our board before the fiscal year begins. Although the board approves beforehand, salary increments are not automatic. They must meet those factors like I have in number 1. And it's subjected to an internal control and review process by my office. So, okay, thank you. That's about it. I'm going to mute and stop sharing. Mr. Director. Back to you guys.
Okay, thank you, Kim. I'll defer back to Mr. Chair, Joseph Agustin.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, Dr. Bersman, for your presentation. So that took care of the first question, okay. I'd like to also, I have additional questions I want to ask you, Mr. Director, and even the chairman, Mr. Sabino Flores, such as, see, what is the process for which executive sessions minutes are kept, and has the authority made efforts to restore or recover minutes not filed accordingly? I think that were some of the issues that were brought up. Are that being taken care of? Mr. Sabino, maybe you can answer that. Mr. Flores? Oh, you have to get unmuted first. Stand by. Joe,
Okay.
there you go.
Okay.
All right,
Okay.
thank you, sir.
I can answer the question in regards to the only the executive session conducted by the current board. Yes, minutes are conducted and a court reporter is actually brought in to not only record the minutes, but also to transcribe the minutes. So there is a formal process as defined under the law, and that's being completely adhered to. As for the previous board meetings, I'll defer to the executive director.
All right, Ray,
Okay,
maybe you can answer that, Ray?
Can you repeat the question, sir, so I can answer it accurately?
Well, basically, has the authority made efforts to restore or recover minutes not filed accordingly during executive sessions?
Okay, the honest answer to that is we're not able to recover or restore minutes that are missing. The deputy director did report to the U.S. Attorney's Office and to the Attorney General's Office, and we have documentation on this where we had alerted them that when we came on board, they were missing executive session documentation as well. So you know, we cannot create something that may have been. I don't even want to go there, but as you know, the Housing Authority went through a lot in the previous administration. There was an FBI raid. We cannot track down some of these executive sessions. We officially notify via correspondence the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Attorney General's Office. Some of the documents that we were trying to retrieve had to do with subpoenas, and we couldn't even respond accurately to these subpoenas because these records were nowhere to be found. So the answer to that is no, we cannot restore it. No, we cannot replace it.
Okay. Maybe now I'll go back to Mr. Sabino Flores. Has the authority begun to work on establishing guidelines for the evaluation of the director and deputy director? Are there set guidelines in place? I don't know if you would want to answer, or Dr. Berseman may have it under the HR rule.
Yeah, I'll defer to Dr. Berseman on the existing procedures being utilized.
For some policies, it's not actually required in the mandate of the law, but like I said, we're always open to process improvements. So I anticipate that coming to the board as a draft in the next 4 to 6 weeks.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, that'll work. At least you're working on it. That's the key. The key is that there's movement. there's movement for improvement. That's what we want to hear. Maybe
May I just add to that?
Yeah, go for it, Ray.
That's a recommendation from the OPA. It's not mandated by HUD, it's not mandated by law, but we certainly will comply simply because we agree. However, if I can just say, most autonomous agencies don't have policies and procedures. I do believe the Port Authority does. I'm not aware of any others, but again, we agree, so we certainly will do it.
Well, Ray, the beauty of this roundtable today is that don't be surprised if it does come out in some bill in some form, that all the other boards will start having this. So we'd be all consistent and there'll be no inconsistency in any way that boards and commissions are being managed. All right. The next one is Mr. Sabino, and maybe even Ray can answer this. How many instances have occurred where voting has taken place in executive session and not in public session? And how is this being corrected? Has there been any incident where you did an executive session and when you're not supposed to vote and there was a vote? I don't know how many times you've had, so maybe you can answer that, Mr. Sabino, and Ray can echo a response because.
Yeah, I can
Sir,
answer. Or go ahead, Ray.
I'll let you answer first, sir.
Okay.
Because you can talk about the current board.
Right.
Okay.
During my tenure as a chairperson, yeah, I have been in one executive session and no voting took place in that executive session.
Thank you.
And
That's
there's
what I
been only
wanted to
one.
hear, because I was on the board also, and you can't do voting in the executive sessions. Ray, you
And may
wanted
I
to
add to
speak
that?
maybe something that was before this current board's time. Maybe you can answer that.
Yes, and I will go ahead and answer that because it's actually reflected in the OPA's audit report. I will attest that voting took place during executive sessions, during working sessions, during secret meetings repeatedly. And even some of my managers were present in some of those meetings, but I'll give you an example, and this led up to charges against the previous board. They voted on the award of tax credits. They voted to change the ACUP and the admin plan, of which our managers were present. I couldn't tell you the number. I can just tell you that decisions and votes took place outside of the public setting. That has not occurred under Sabino's watch, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, Ray. My next question is, if maybe Dr. Berseman would answer that. Explain the current process for which classified employees' pay adjustments are ratified. Is there a process to ratify pay adjustment of classified employees?
Today again, Mr. Chair, in my second slide, it's the same process, whether it be unclassified or
Okay.
classified. Everything goes to the board for their review and approval, and it's not effectuated until the board approves.
All right. Okay. Thank you. And that's what I wanted to hear, that there shouldn't be any difference between classified and unclassified. Everything's consistent,
Yes.
and you stay in the same road. I'd like to open up the questions now to the members of my committee. And we'll begin with my vice chair, and that's Senator Amanda Shelton. Ma'am, do you have any questions, ma'am, you would like to pose to the board or the director?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think you covered some of my questions yourself. I'd just like to thank everyone from GURA, the board, and all of the team for being with us today and sharing this information. I do appreciate it. And I'll reserve my questions for down the line in the agenda. I know there are some other topics I have questions on.
All right. We have Senator Regine Besculi. Ma'am, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity. And I want to thank Director Tapasnia and Dr. Berseman for their presentations to us today. And thank you to the GURA team for your work to address the previous audit findings and to make many of those necessary improvements. I do have a question for the director. Mr. Tapasnia, you, in the beginning of your presentation, you detailed a number of, I guess, points of misinformation from the media and elected officials that can be somewhat difficult to take on board, because you also claimed that in reporting that the board approved a raise was also misinformation. And I know that your staff has gone over the technical differences between a raise and an increment, but are you able to acknowledge that to many people in the public, especially the general public, it just kind of sounds like hair splitting? Can you maybe concede that even though this increment was based on merit, an increment it's a raise, it's a salary adjustment? What would you say to the members of the public that are, even though there is a technical difference and there's different forms to be filled out, it's essentially the same thing. You're still getting more money for the job that you're doing.
Okay, may I respond?
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. I admitted on, I believe, the Patty Arroyo show that the timing was inappropriate, first of all. However, a decision had to be made, whether the timing was bad, which it was, and the pushback we will get for bad timing versus the meeting we had the day prior with the OPA, where pay increments for executive management needed to be ratified by the board. We were approaching the end of the fiscal year. Most boards meet once a month. Our board meets more often than that if we can, or if they can. And we were approaching the end of the fiscal year. So if we were to ratify something in FY21 for an action that required ratification in FY20, it may show up in future audits. So the timing was bad. Immediately after the board ratified, I had instructed personnel not to process, because the whole intent was to be as transparent as possible. Keep in mind, I don't want to throw my other cabinet members under the bus, but no one else, or I'm not aware of other agencies ratifying as much as we do. And the ratification is simply to have full transparency. But again, immediately after the board ratified, we and the media can say whatever they want, but I immediately instructed, and Kim will testify to this, do not process, the timing's not right. But if I can just share with the commissioners, our system's a little bit different from most. The mindset out there is, well, you're a director, you don't fall on, you're not entitled to increments. That's not what our personnel rules and regs say. I welcome everyone from the Guam legislature, since we filed it back in 2011 and 2013, read our personnel rules and regs. So it treats classified and unclassified the same. That was filed with the Guam legislature and underwent public hearings. So, yeah, the timing's bad, but my wife just received her increment in May from public health. So if you're suggesting that the timing is bad for me, then you're suggesting that my wife's timing was bad. It's not her fault. And then you're suggesting that maybe, several thousand employees as well, their timing is bad, because the governor has not directed cabinet members to place a moratorium on salary increments, nor has the legislature passed a law that puts a moratorium on salary increments. So even though, thousands of people have lost their jobs due to COVID, and we feel really bad about that, no one knows that better than me. Most of the families that we provide a home to have been affected by COVID. But nonetheless, we've not been directed, and because we are obligated, we are legally and morally obligated to pay for these increments and budgeted for. We would be facing a class action lawsuit if the board were to say we're not going to do it anymore after the evaluation was already completed and the individual received satisfactory or better. And that would not just apply to GOR, that would apply government-wide. The implications are huge. So yeah, everyone wants to point fingers at me and Liz, and quite frankly, if if what you're saying is no one is entitled to a salary increment because because thousands of people are suffering, then I really recommend that the Guam legislature pass a law or talk to the governor about implementing or signing an executive order that says no salary increments are going to be processed moving forward because of COVID. That hasn't happened, so we're still legally obligated to approve these things. So yeah, the timing is bad, and that's all there was to it. I admit to that. If I had a choice between bad timing and having an audit finding, I would choose bad timing because we didn't do anything wrong.
May I say something, Senator San Augustine?
Okay,
May I say something?
Yeah, who's that? I'm looking
Ms.
for.
Napoli?
Oh, Ms. Napoli. Yes, well, I'll stand by. Senator Lee, did you want to respond
No, that's
to Ms.
fine.
Napoli?
If Miss Napoli would like to also respond, I'd appreciate that.
All right, go ahead, Liz.
Well, one of the things I want to say is, you know, Ray and I aren't the ones that initiate. Employees don't initiate their performance evaluations. That's an HR function. So even when it happens, it's like, oh, really? We have to get a performance evaluation? That's not something I think about. It's not something he and I planned. It's something initiated by HR. So she was following through on her mandated duty. So I would just like everybody out there to know, this is not something the director and I initiated, okay? Someone was doing her job. The board members were doing their job. And I just really take offense to all the disparaging remarks made against the board members and our staff who were just doing their jobs. So, you know, I guess we'll leave it up to, you know, the legals, right? To determine where we're going to go from this point forward. Nothing has been paid out. Everybody was just trying to finish the paperwork within an audit fiscal year ending. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Director and Ms. Napoli for those responses. And I guess just to follow up on the response in terms of it being an HR function and also following up on the timing response, I guess my question to you, my follow-up question to you is, can you understand how the general public and perhaps some members of the legislature don't equate the director and deputy director with rank and file classified employees of the government? Shouldn't appointed managers and executives be treated separate and apart from those in classified service? Because in my opinion, on increments for a nurse would definitely be different than giving an increment to the CEO of GMH or the head of an agency. So yeah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to respond to some of that.
Yeah, I can respond to that, and thank you for that question, Senator. I think that for the record, and I don't want to throw my fellow cabinet members under the bus, we're not the only ones, or we're not the only autonomous agency heads that receive increments. Secondly, if there was a problem, then the right time for the legislature to raise the issue was 2011, 2013, and not 9 years later during an election year, because somebody told the media that our audit is bad. All the certified public accountants would disagree. You know, there's a lot of personal attacks against me and my deputy. We don't deserve this. My team, we come to work every day. This is one of the most professional organizations in all of Guam. And, you know, rather than the last hour of trying to explain what we did to the legislature, which is in fully conforming to our personnel rules and regs, you know, we have a lot of work. We have an audit that we need to comply with the deadline by March, even though now we'll be months ahead of schedule. But the bottom line is, yeah, a lot of personal attacks. We don't deserve it. I don't think anybody on my team deserves it. You know, I've been called the Trump of the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration. Come on. But the bottom line is this. We will continue to be mission focused. If the legislature has issues with our personnel rules and regs, please review it. We'll send you another copy, same copy we sent you in 2013 and 2011. But the right time to raise issue about the compensation study and whether a director should not be treated as a classified employee was 2011 and 2013. Nobody said anything then. We've been processing increments for my predecessor for he received 6 separate increments. So nobody said anything then. As well, the deputy, nobody said anything then. So it's, it's quite disturbing that 6 years later, or 9 years later, everyone's got a problem with a salary increment that is fully conforming to our personnel rules and regs that was filed back in 2011. So, I was a classified employee for, 20 some years, 27, 28 years maybe. So yeah, part of me feels that way, but as well, GUR is different. We have our own personnel rules and regs. I challenge everyone in the Guam legislature to read it. We even had, and Kim will attest this, we had Department of Administration review it back in 2013. They provided comment, we addressed their comments, and we moved forward. So yeah, everyone may feel differently, but if it's mandated by our personnel rules and regs, which in my opinion, and I'm not a lawyer, but has the effect of a law, if it's filed with the Guam legislature, if it underwent the AAA process, it's you guys that established that AAA process, and we followed it to the core. And we filed it, nobody said anything, and 9 years later, it's problematic. So that's all I have to say about that.
Okay, Mr. Director, sorry, I apologize, Mr. Chair. Did you want me to hold? I have one more question. I can hold it if you're going to do another round, or I can just ask it now.
Yes. Well, what we're going to do is we're only on item number 1 on the agenda. We'll still need to talk about the mortgage and rent relief program, the federally funded programs to prevent and combat homelessness and government-assisted living facilities. So,
right. My question is with regard to the GovGuam audit.
Yes, and that's what we're discussing right now on the agenda. If you have a question in reference to that, please feel free to ask that now.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Tapasnia, I think the most important kind of undercurrent to all of this, and you made mention of this in your presentation, is what is perceived as GURA's role in delaying the completion of the entire GovGuam audit. And again, you mentioned in your presentation that the completion of your agency's audit is tied to a federal deadline and not our local one. But I think our public auditor has explained how submitting GovGuam's audit without GURA would have negative consequences for the entire local government and the municipal bonds that are currently active. So I guess my question to you, Mr. Director, is if GURA isn't tied to GovGuam's deadline, then why would you commit to complete it by the local deadline next year? Why would you promise the governor and lieutenant governor to do that for next year if what you're also saying is that you don't need to because you are operating under a federal deadline and not the local one?
Why would I commit to a March 31st deadline? Because that's why we're here today, Senator. It's because of all this misinformation in the media. It just baffles me. I'm perplexed that if we receive not a penny from the GovGuam coffers, that I would be to blame for putting the entire government of Guam at risk when I never asked the governor for a penny, nor have I asked the legislature for a penny. But it's troubling that all the fingers are pointing at GURA. But the bottom line is we will meet the March 31st deadline. We will be way ahead of schedule for any housing authority nationwide, and there's several hundred. Simply because, in answer to your question, because we don't want fingers to be pointed at us, and we don't want to be having another roundtable or oversight or anything of that nature, when the only thing we've done, we've been mission focused, trying to do the best we can and no one's going to doubt that we're probably the most forward moving agency in all of Guam since the Leon Guerrero Tenorio administration took place. So we are so focused on our jobs from the maintenance guy to me, to all of my mid-managers, and we're very, very not happy about the recent reports in the media, personal attacks, not just against me, but when you attack me, you attack this entire organization. When you call out our audits, you call out my controller, who's a CPA, and my 2 other CPAs. When you call out the audit findings that we don't even agree with, and by the way, that $7,000 in question costs, we don't even agree with some of that, but it wasn't worth our effort to keep fighting with the auditors. Even HUD doesn't completely agree with a lot of the things that they pointed out. So, I'm not going to throw my independent auditors under the bus. I'm just going to say you say potato, I say potato, but it ain't worth it. It's a 7,000, 0.010 in question cost in terms of percentage. Ain't worth it. Let's finish the audit and let's move forward. Unfortunately, that's not how it rolled. It just blossomed out of control, and now we're the worst agency in all of Guam. But if I can share with you, look at the other audits because of autonomous agencies, because the question costs are significantly higher than ours. And I don't want to get my fellow cabinet members in trouble. I'm just saying, I don't think you're going to find another agency where question costs are 0.010% of your operating budget. It's probably the lowest of all of Guam. And, you don't need to be a rocket scientist to just do the math. Divide 7,000 into our $69 million budget. And if you take into account our pass-through accounts and our low-income housing tax credits, then you would need to divide 7,000 into $112 million, and that would make it 0.000035% of our operating budget. So, it's the worst audit according to those that are not even certified. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
May I just comment quickly, Senator San Agustin? Just to get back to Senator Lee's question, we've always known for years, at least when I came in last year, we knew that there was a March 31st deadline, and we were a little bit behind then, okay? This year, because of that, we had every intention of meeting the March 31st deadline, but not having our auditors actually approved until January, and then mid-March, our office is closed for 8 weeks. It was just a whole slew of unprecedented circumstances that prevented us. And it's not an excuse, they were actual things that happened. So there was never intention to disregard the March 31st deadline this year. It just came out that way. That's why now we're already working with the auditor. It's already started. We're working towards completing it by March 31st next year, even though ours are not due till June. Okay.
Okay, thank you. Senator Lee, yep. All right, Senator Luis Muña. So I don't call you last. Senator Luis, Senator Luis, please, do you have any questions on the first item on the agenda?
I was starting to feel bad, Mr. Chair. No, it's okay.
I apologize, ma'am.
No worries, no worries. I don't have, thank you, Mr. Chair. Some of the questions that have been asked already were my questions based on this part of the agenda. So if I can just reserve for the next part of the agenda.
All right, okay. Senator Kelly Marsh-Titano, ma'am, do you have anything, ma'am? Senator Kelly.
Mr. Chair. Yes, I really thank you for having this roundtable. I think it's always good when we're hearing from our agencies, we're keeping the communication open. They're having a chance, and they did provide a couple of presentations, and it's always good to get that information. We have heard that there is good performance by GURA, and it does bring in a lot of benefits for our community. At the same time, we are hearing about, and I think what it is the number of salary increments or raises. I'm not quite sure which technical term to use right now, but it's the number of them in a short period of time and the amount. And so that I think is is what's been most concerning. And, you know, I'll use a little bit of an illustration. When I was teaching critical thinking, and it was a father could point to a son and say, you shouldn't smoke. And the son could point to the father and say, well, you smoke, therefore you have no right to tell me what to do. But it doesn't change the fact that for the son, smoking is just as detrimental. It doesn't matter whether the father smokes or not. The smoking is still detrimental to the son's health, and it doesn't change the logic there. So I think what could help us understand these things and what the concern is how often do these things happen? What are we looking at now and in the future? So the past director may have gotten 6 increments, and maybe people should have been concerned, maybe they shouldn't have. I'm not sure at this point, but there is concern now. So to help us understand that landscape, how often does this come up for possible increments? Is it something that happens once or twice a year that these performance evaluations happen? Can you explain that to us? And I think the more we understand this, the more we feel comfortable or at least understand the procedures.
All right, we'll have maybe Dr. Berseman, not you, Ray, would be able to answer that. She's your HR person. So we'll let her answer that, Ray. Just relax, Ray. Dr. Berseman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, San Agustin. And thank you, Senator Marsh, for that question. Because we're unique, we know that our compensation plan is set for every annual salary increment period. However, with the budget being tight, and we know that with the federal budget being beyond the trillions already, we know we need to tighten our belt like every other government entity. So we're going to need to go back and assess that very, very soon. And so the way the rules were written, it's the board's power to eventually look at assessing that. And that's why with the board's power, we can, funding hurts, we can bring it back quicker. And if funding really, really hurts, we go back, we can merge back into the competitive wage act. So there's a couple things, and with everything going on with the finances worldwide, that's a reality. So thank you, Senator Marsh. Thank you.
Yeah,
May I add to that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Ray.
Okay. Just for clarification purposes, and maybe this is more appropriately explained by Kimberly, but I know there was some discussion in the audit about 2 separate adjustments for the executive director and 2 separate adjustments for the deputy. And if I can just clarify, and Kim, you can chime in if you want. When we came on board, there was a deviation by the previous board of the executive director salary and deputy. In fact, the deputy was down at 80-some thousand, which was about a $50,000 gap between the executive director and deputy. And that was primarily because the previous board, when it came to executive management, had deviated from the compensation plan. So what this board did is brought it back to where it should have been. So it's being misconstrued as all these huge salary or pay raises by the existing board. That's not the case. The adjustment should have been made in January. It wasn't, and it wasn't because there was a challenge that the new administration had by appointing board members. So there was what I call a hybrid board. We even have a hybrid board today where you have appointees of the previous administration and appointees of the new administration. And there's nothing wrong with that. I actually think it works well. But what happened before Sabino came on board, before our chairman came on board, is the previous board members had deviated from the plan and didn't want to allow, come January 2019, the correction. So the correction actually happened closer to the end of the year. So it gave the impression that, hey, this guy got more raises than he should have been, when in reality that adjustment should have been made in January. The other adjustment was an action that we had to go to HUD to get approval, because HUD had identified about $2.7 million in money that they were going to recapture. So I went to the board and said, hey, I need to do all of these things. It didn't just include pay adjustments for staff, but it did include that. But it included a whole number of things to equate to $2.6 million, so that we can stave off HUD from recapturing all this money. We've not since heard any more threats from HUD to recapture these funds, so we're very pleased with that. But it required the board to approve a number of things, to include procuring equipment, computers, vehicles, and some may perceive it as a spending spree. The way we viewed it, and how we presented it to the board, is either we spend the money and we spend it very prudently, or we're going to lose the money. And that included pay adjustments across the board, from the person at the bottom to the person at the top. No one objected at the time. Election year comes and everyone has an issue. But the point I'm trying to make is, there's nothing I received and nothing the deputy received that nobody else receives here. And it was all in conformance to what was approved by the board, what was ultimately paid for by HUD. And HUD, everybody knows, if you guys have managed federal funding, if you don't spend it, you're going to lose it. So it wasn't just pay adjustments, it was everything in addition to pay adjustments. And pay adjustments were even the smallest percentage increase. We really, really beefed up our operations. We have 53 CCTV cameras that are operational to ensure that our families and our employees are safe. And we didn't have to do that. That's what we want. That's what we took to the board that we wanted to do. I'm sure some of the employees are not happy, because you have cameras watching every step. But the bottom line is, we were concerned about safety and security. Coming from the airport, that's a very important thing. I would bet money we have more cameras working than some other agencies. Thank you.
So to Esponsi for those answers. And I guess part of what we want to understand for context is, if there is the opportunity for performance review and then a potential pay adjustment of some sort associated with that, is 4% the maximum? Where does that scale come from with the 4%? Could it be higher? Like, if it was outstanding, would it have been 6%? If somebody could explain the 4%, and if that's typical for people to get within HUD organizations to annually get 4% or so pay increases.
Okay, I'll take that question. Based on our pay for performance, that's the beauty of switching. And I thank the past board in 2011 for approving that, because it took us out and emphasized pay for performance. So it's not just based on time, but your performance to the organization. So we basically have a four level, marginal, well, unsat, get 0, marginal, you get 1, satisfactory, you get 3, highly stat, you get 4, and outstanding, you get 6. The bulk of the percentages fall within between the stat and highly stat field. And that's why when I say there's internal controls and reviews, better have your justification for anything higher, because it's my butt that has to answer to the auditors from the Fed side. So that's the internal controls and reviews I talk about. I'm like, you better write a book. Where's the justification? So I would kick it back. So, and file integrity is very important to me. And so I'm just a stickler with that as an HR professional. And yeah, so that's what I want to say about that.
Okay.
All right, Senator Kelly, do you have anything else?
Yeah, so in referencing that, so that, I know that for locally, is that a standard that is applied nationally with HUD organizations? Just to make sure I.
For the top positions, there is a federal cap. And that's why the HR department has to verify if it's in line with that cap based on a certain level that we have. So for documentation purposes, I'm putting that notation on the personal action for salary increments, verified the HUD salary cap standard. So.
Okay, and that
And
does
it's
help
in line.
provide context. Yeah, and so we can look at that more carefully. The last thing, if I could throw in there really quickly, there was mention that there weren't enough accountants. So there are 3 certified accountants, if I caught that correctly by the director. Is this considered by GURA adequate to get things done in a timely fashion, and it was really more the circumstances that changed the situation, or would it be helpful to have another accountant to be more timely?
I can respond to that, Senator. For the record, in our FY21 budget that was passed by the board, we have 2 accountants that we budgeted for. I will be the first to admit we need more help, not just in accounting, but in many areas, but the priority is in our fiscal department. Yes, it's been identified in previous audit reports that we need more accountants. We also recently lost a staffer in accounting, and then we lost I believe, accounting supervisor to the University of Guam. If the independent auditors are saying auditing GURA was like auditing 7 autonomous agencies, go figure why most people would not want to work here. Working at GURA's fiscal department is not for the timid. There's a lot of work, but we take pride in the good work that we do. But yes, it's a top priority for us to fill those vacancies. Whether we're going to get accountants or certified public accountants to apply is another story. We're in the news that we got too much work and we can't keep up with it. And thanks to misinformation in the media, it makes it appear like GURA is not the place you want to work if you're not willing to work over and beyond the call of duty. So. But we will try, and we will announce those positions right away, and we will try and fill it.
Okay, hearing that those positions are going to be announced is helpful again in understanding the context, and with that additional monies, I mean, if there is that need, then finding a way to supplement would be good. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you. Senator Jim Moylan, do you have any questions for the board or the director or deputy director? Jim?
Mr. Chairman, thank you for the presentation. I did read over the report and I wrote down all my questions, but having listened to what you stated, I'm still going to kind of come to my own conclusions on those questions, but I want to just review a few things more with you. So on the Deloitte single audit report for this year ending of September 30, 2019, they gave two different deficiencies. One is the material weakness, and the other one is a significant deficiency. So my understanding of these material weaknesses, it's basically dealing with control and compliance. It's in-house control and the compliance requirements of the federal government programs that is prevented because there's no in-house control. And it can't be detected or corrected in a timely basis. So that's Deloitte. And they talked about two material weaknesses that was identified, which is lack of documents to substantiate compliance requirements for reasonable rental rates. And the other one talked about small purchase procurement methods used for construction contracts above $50,000. So I understand from the director, I guess this report differs from the HUD audit. And therefore the HUD audit kind of, from your explanation of what I'm understanding, is that the HUD audit trumps the OPA report. And so basically the OPA, what they took so long to do, is incorrect, because this doesn't seem to be a material weakness from your definition, or a significant deficiency. And the significant deficiencies are similar to material weaknesses. The problems, again, go to internal control over compliance, but it's just not as severe as the material weaknesses. And on the significant deficiencies, it gives, you mentioned it also, the $100,000 unreconciled, 5 million overstated unearned revenue, 706,000 understated capital assets, 237,000 unreported income, and the absence of quality control review. But again, I'm going to go back to what I'm understanding. You explained it pretty well in your slides. The HUD audit gave you a clean audit, and that trumps the OPA audit. So, I guess I'll just have to talk to OPA, because they made me study these reports, but it seems to be incorrect on how they're defining their reports and explaining their reports based on what I'm understanding from the director. So I have another question after that, but maybe Mr. Director Tapasna, if you can, am I correct?
No, my apologies if you misunderstood what I said. There is no HUD audit. There is a independent audit performed by Deloitte & Touche for FY19, and it's mandated that we get our books audited every fiscal year. The audit report, the final results are, we have a clean opinion or an unmodified opinion. This is the OPA report. On our financial statements, we have a unmodified opinion or a clean opinion on 4 of the 6 major programs that were audited. And that included public housing and Section 8 are 2 major programs. So is it a perfect audit? No, you're not going to find a perfect audit in any government agency. You're not going to find a perfect audit anywhere. However, the end result of the OPA audit, not HUD's audit, is we received a clean opinion on our financial statements. We received clean opinions on 4 major programs. The two major programs that we did not get a clean opinion on, those are what you're talking about, the significant deficiencies. In totality, that's 7,000 in question cost. That's not money that's missing. That's the auditors, in one particular case, that's the auditor's opinion or interpretation of a federal rule that we probably don't agree in its entirety, but would require more time to get clarification from HUD. So no, there's only one audit, and it's performed by the OPA. The OPA, unfortunately, what's being reported in the media are the little things that I was able to clarify earlier. But what the point you're missing, sir, with all due respect, is it was a clean audit on the financials. It was a clean audit on 4 major programs, and it was a modified opinion on 2. And I explained those 2 matters in detail. But if you want, I can have our managers chime in and tell, but it may go on, this hearing could go on for a long time in terms of what our interpretation of those regs are. In one particular area, there were missing documents. It's supposed to be in folder A, but it ended up in folder B. My apologies, we're not perfect. That will be an audit finding as far as federal regs are concerned. When they review the files, it needs to be in there. If a clerk may have misplaced it, it happens. Again, we're not a perfect organization. That will be an audit finding. We are ensuring that doesn't happen in the future. Do other housing authorities misplace documents? Yes. Do other government agencies misplace documents? Yes. I was at the airport for 16 years. Do we misplace documents? Yes. Is it an audit finding? No. It's an audit finding if it's GORA.
All right, thank you. So I'm just going to consider this material weakness and significant deficiencies insignificant in your views because we're all not perfect, but it can be somehow addressed later. I don't need to hear any other of your employees to further explain these insignificant findings of this audit report. But there was another also thing that was part of this report, actually the OPA's report. And I know you mentioned it already and you talked about it, but it's the delay of financial reporting adversely impacted government of Guam. And then the chairman, Senator San Agustin, we were talking about, we were awaiting this audit report from OPA because we're all in a hurry to figure out, do we have some lapsed funds? Do we have over projected funds that we could use for our budget hearing? And we waited and we waited and it just didn't come. And then the report says GURA lacks a timely completion of its audit financial statements, and it adversely impacted the completion and issuance of Gov Guam financial statements. Failure to include GURA's financial statements as a component unit may potentially result in an adverse opinion on Gov Guam's financial statements. This, in turn, impacts the ability of Gov Guam to timely report to the stakeholders, including bondholders, Guam legislatures, and the federal government. So it impacted me. If you had to report to HUD later versus us first, it impacted our ability, or we could have used those numbers, in other words, to help us with our budget reporting. And you explained it, and maybe it will be different next coming year. But whether it came from the OPA or not, as part of the budgeting process, we really need these reports. And if OPA is saying they were holding up this report because they're waiting for GURA, whatever your explanation is, we really needed the reports. And the chairman was telling me, just hold on, Jim, you can get the report, but we're just waiting on it. And so I just want to know the impact that it has on ourselves here.
Thank you, Senator, but may I just respond to that?
Shortly, please, because
we finished the governor gave us a 3-week timeline to complete the audit. We finished within that 3-week timeline. Granted, it was late, but not primarily because of things that we had control over. But the governor gave us a 3-week timeline. We completed that audit on Friday. The audit could have been released Friday. It wasn't. Saturday came, Sunday came, Monday came, Tuesday came. It was released, I believe, Wednesday. So it's interesting how everybody's pointing fingers at GURA. Everyone's pointing fingers at me, but it was interesting. It's quite shocking. I'll bet people are not going to didn't know that we finished it on Friday and it didn't get released till 4 or 5 days later. So yeah, to keep pointing blame and beating a dead horse when an additional 5 days was added to after we had completed together with Deloitte, that audit is very troubling. In addition to that specific finding in there, typically you would think if you're going to find a finding, the agency has the opportunity to respond to that finding. We weren't given an opportunity to respond. So, a lot of finger pointing. I'm not going to get into it with the OPA. He's going to audit us every year. I don't want to get in on his bad side. I'm just going to say, we finished it on Friday. It didn't come out till, I think, Wednesday. B, I didn't have control over the timelines in terms of the audit. Again, we were instructed to put out an RFP for a new auditor. That wasn't my instruction. That wasn't the board's instruction. So we complied. But then as part of the procurement process, entities outside of GURA needed to appoint someone to the evaluation committee. I don't have control over that. And so that process in and of itself took a while. It delayed everything all the way up to COVID. And then here we are, COVID, the first PCOR one was 2 months. Guess what? We're 2 months late. My controller was sending me emails saying, do we meet with the auditors? Do we meet with the auditors? GURA continued to operate in terms of our essential functions. I tried to get the powers that be to approve also doing audit functions, and it wasn't supported simply because we were dealing with a pandemic that we weren't familiar with, that nobody knew whether, whether it was going to get bad, and it did get bad. And I wasn't going to put my staff's lives at risk and the lives of the auditor. And keep in mind, when the governor shut down the operations based on PCOR 1, she shut down the private sector. So for me to direct auditors to report to GURA to complete an audit while the government of Guam and the private sector was shut down is not within my control. Blame me all you want. I sleep good at night, sir.
That's fine, Director, and I appreciate all your hard work and you and your team, right? I'm just letting you know how this is affected. So thank you for that. But Mr. Chairman, another question also for Dr. Berseman. Kim, please. Doctor, with the evaluations strictly for unclassified, is it in your SOP, if the evaluation is of the rating, a good rating, must the board give pay raise with a good evaluation for unclassified?
Hey, Senator Jim.
I can.
Okay, so trying to understand your question.
Yes.
The personal rules and regs, specifically 7.008, identifies unclassified and exempt positions in the processing of salary or our formal performance evaluation system. So yes, and in order to merit that, a performance evaluation form must be completed, and to be eligible, it must be marginal or higher because it's paid for performance.
So
before we cut an action, everything must be completed in order. But the board doesn't ratify at the end. We get the board's approval at the beginning of the fiscal year attached with the budget. So their approval is at the front end, and then it's subject, not automatic. It's subject to the rest of the personal rules and regs. So, and we do have people that don't merit, and then their next waiting period just moves. And so that's the beauty of it. You have two inspectors in the same division. One's mediocre, one's outstanding. So that's the beauty of it, of the plan. So everything must be documented before it's processed. So I hope I got your question.
It's pretty detailed. However, my question is, you get a good evaluation, you're the director or deputy director, unclassified position, you qualify, must a pay raise come with that? Or can you just get a good evaluation without getting a pay raise? Saying, way to go.
Okay, well, because it's specific in the rules and regs, that technically could be a legal challenge because we combined all those three types of positions. The only ones not getting increments are attempts, and we use them a lot. They're an integral part of our operation. So that probably could lead to some type of litigation, and I'd rather we go through that professionally mannered fashion of handling this instead of litigating it right here. So respectfully asking Senator Chairman Agustin if we could
Okay.
do it.
I understand. Oh, okay, that's pretty clear. And also there are the director and deputy director positions are not, that's something you're going to add into the SOP because right now they're not included, right? That was one of the findings, and I think the director was saying they're going with that. Is that correct?
Oh, I think it's referring to an actual SOP. There's already a law, but you have to rate, the Board of Commissioners has to rate the executive director within the first 6 months of coming on board, and thereafter every year. So that's so broad. You could look at it one way saying, hey, we're so highly regulated already. It's in the law. Why have one? You're only looking at it affecting 2 people. And in the OPA's report, it noted that we have a very comprehensive and strict performance evaluation plan for classified employees. So we're already conceded to, hey, we're always open for improvements, and I hope to get that to the board within 4 to 6 weeks. And I don't want to tie the board the hands of the board, because they have so much broad power. They, by Organic Act and in part by the federal statute, they can come up with their own forms. So I don't really want to tie them down to a set prescribed form, but I might have to just do a little simple thing so that it's understood how they want to evaluate the top 2 positions. And so
Okay.
it never hurts to have it. Okay.
Right.
But
Okay.
the emphasis was on the employees.
Thank you. Ken. Thank you.
May I add to that, sir? Because I think you're confusing the two.
All right.
The personnel rules and regulations covers unclassified personnel to include the director and deputy director. What the OPA report cited is they had recommended that we have policies and procedures to evaluate the director and deputy director, but in no way, shape, or form is the director and deputy director left out of the compensation plan, nor are they left out of the personnel rules and regulations. So you're mixing up the recommendation of the OPA report, which is to have policies and procedures to evaluate. And as Kim mentioned, we'll do that if that's the recommendation, but you're basically tying the hands of the board and forcing the board to evaluate us a certain way, when it really should be up to the board. The board can pay me $1 a year. The board can pay me $10 a year if they really wanted to, but they would violate the personnel rules and regs. So the bottom line is no, we are part of the personnel rules and regs. We are part of the compensation study, but separate and apart from that, the OPA recommended policies and procedures like what you would see at the port. But that's policies and procedures we're not aware of are done anywhere else in GovGuam as far as executive leadership is concerned. But we'll do it.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Director. Mr. Chairman, it reminded me of director also said, well, the legislature can submit a bill then if they wanted to make some changes. So Director, just for your information, I did submit Bill 403, and that's relative to prohibiting any salary increments and authorization to retroactive payments during a declaration of a state of public health emergency for unclassified agency heads of the government of Guam. So, Mr. Chairman, hopefully we can get a hearing on this, and we can hear the different viewpoints from all our different agencies. But I thank Gura for their presentation. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the opportunity. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Jim. Senator Will Castro, are you still here? I'm looking. I don't see you there. Senator Therese Terlai, ma'am, do you have any questions on the first issue on the agenda, the fiscal year audit report, ma'am?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right.
And I thank you for this oversight hearing. The purpose of our oversight hearings are really not to attack anybody, but because we think things can be improved. So we're trying to get to the real issue and see if there's a way we can facilitate that or just urge that along. So I hope you don't take this as an attack on anyone here personally, and it's really just for that purpose. And we also represent the people of Guam who Gura is acting on behalf of all of us, and so we just want to do what we do with all of our agencies, and that is to make sure that they are performing in the best way possible for all of the people of Guam. And so I don't think the timing of us questioning, what occurred is because of an election necessarily, but because of the COVID that we are experiencing, the unprecedented 30,000 people who are out of jobs, the unprecedented drastic cuts in revenue, where this audit became a huge factor. And that's your perfect storm. Like the deputy was saying, there was a perfect storm on your side. There's a perfect storm on our side as well. And on the people of Guam's side that they are facing and thinking that if we can get any of this money to them, of course, that's on everyone's mind. So I hope you don't mind. And so the
Madam
prior-
Senator, may I respond to that?
I'm just stating my observations, Mr. Director. Yeah. I know that, yeah, you denied everything that's been alleged pretty much so far. The prior GovGuam audit, also, they've always included GURA. They've always been submitted, or pretty much, at least for in the recent years, before August, pretty much in June. And so, and I note that the other agencies were able to submit their audit requirements despite the COVID that everybody faced. And that while I've heard your explanations and you're challenging these findings, and I understand that you might be correct, but that there were actually qualified findings, and we are, in the position where the public auditors brought this to our attention, and so we recognize that it wasn't a low risk auditee, that GURA was not a low risk auditee like GCC was. And I think when some people say clean audits, that's kind of what we're looking at also. So there's a difference, and I want to commend you, Mr. Director, the deputy, and all the staff for the clean parts of your audit, the great parts of your programs, and the work that you have done during the COVID. I think it's very clear that work has proceeded necessarily. So what I learned today that I wasn't aware of, I kept trying to figure out why the director at GURA was not included, because the statute requires that increments, it requires that classified employees are entitled to increments. That's 4 GCA 6202. And now I hear that, so GURA has its own rules and regs for personnel, and that's why the director and deputy are treated differently than the line agencies. And then I also looked at 4 GCA 6206.1, which says that there's a limit on salaries of directors and deputies paid by GovGuam funds, that they cannot exceed the salaries of I think the governor or the lieutenant governor. And now I know that GURA is exempt from that also, because you're fully federally funded. And so this is an agency that is really treated differently, I guess, than the rest of the line agency directors and deputies. When you said, Mr. Director, that the governor gave you 3 weeks, what do you mean by that? When was that deadline given, and what was that? Why was that deadline given, as opposed to what the auditor had requested or the statute had mandated?
We had a Zoom conference call with the governor's office and the OPA and GURA, and we were given a 3-week timeline to complete the audit. And we met that 3-week timeline. We completed that timeline. I forget the exact date, but it was on a Friday, and the audit wasn't released till several days later. So, that's why, again, a lot of finger pointing. But if in fact the audit needed to get out as soon as possible, you would think if we finished it on a Friday, that you could possibly release it by Saturday or Sunday. The ones conducting the audit is not the OPA. The ones conducting the audit are the independent auditors. So we're not conducting the audit. So a lot of finger pointing. I'm not the one doing the audit. I'm trying my best. We cannot control, as I said earlier, maybe the legislature needs to pass or needs to look into why it took a while for GURA to award the contract for the audit. There were issues that were beyond my control. And I'm not going to litigate this in the media or in front of the legislature. But if I'm telling you, and I can provide you documentation, that there are matters that are outside of my control simply because the procurement process requires those to be included in the evaluation committee outside of GURA, I can't tell another agency to appoint today or else. That's outside of my control.
Yeah, but that is perhaps what the governor's office could have assisted with, if you're talking about other agencies needing to?
No, the governor's office didn't have control over those other agencies, but I will not say who
Are
those
they
other
government
agencies
of
are.
Guam agencies? Are you talking about
Yes.
government of Guam agencies? Okay. So I think the governor actually has control of the government of Guam.
No, the governor doesn't have control, madam, of the legislature, nor the utilities, nor certain entities.
So there's a legislative,
different.
there's a legislature representative on your GURA procurement rating team? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying if I told you publicly who may have contributed to the delay, it would just create more problems. So I prefer not to say it. You can probably ask me offline.
Well, if it's an issue, then you should be telling us what the issues are that we can correct, Mr. Director. When you said that you were instructed to appoint a new auditor, what do you mean by that? Who instructed you?
Well, there's two issues. We were instructed to not exercise the option to extend, which delayed it even further, because if we went with the same auditor, we would have been done way ahead of schedule.
Yeah, so
we were directed to not to exercise that option to extend, and then as part of the procurement process, someone had to be appointed outside of GURA onto that panel that would evaluate, and I didn't have control over that either. But me telling you what that agency is would just add insult to injury.
Ayade. Okay, so who instructed you not to extend the term, or you said to appoint a new auditor? Who instructed that? You were instructed by who?
The same individual that's been interviewed recently and declaring that our audit is leading up to a third-party receiver.
Okay, and so when was that instruction made?
Sometime last year. I would have to verify with our.
In 2019.
Yes.
So, okay. And when was the RFP made, and when was the contract made for your new auditor?
You know, my apologies. I didn't know we were going to get into those details. I can provide you that information later.
But just approximately, was it in 2019, or was it after the COVID health emergency?
Oh no, way in early on, or I don't know, mid part of 2019.
Okay. All right, Mr. Chair, I think those are all my questions, but yeah, I just again want to say that, you know, we are trying to understand, you know, what happened and why, and you also, I think, should just try to understand too that, you know, the public auditor brought this to our attention because of our demands for the GovGuam audit. And because it was brought to our attention, we are going to deal with it. And you're saying, why didn't we question all the other, you know, well, many of us weren't around in those times. And the ones, you know, maybe we weren't demanding that GovGuam audit like we are this year. You know, we are desperate for money. We are desperately looking for any way that we can give relief to the people of Guam. So please just bear with us. And I appreciate your cooperation today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Tello, do you have any questions, ma'am?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And for the sake of time, I'll try and make it short. At least the answers could be just yes or no. Maybe that'll help. But first, I want to thank all that who's here from GURA, the hardworking individuals from GURA that are here. And you know, this is not an attack. Definitely, if we are questioning the director, I don't see it as an attack to the office. So whatever, I mean, he has to stand up for what he does himself. But I've known Catherine Taitano, Julie Lujan, who's been at GURA for years, and they're excellent individuals. We've got a great board. You know, I know Monica personally, as well as my teacher, George Pareda in high school was my teacher. So I understand all the hard work that you do at GURA and greatly appreciate. But like it was said earlier too, we're here to help and do what we can, and then weed out what the issues are. But definitely, an attack on talking with the director is definitely not an attack on the office of GURA. Okay, so I just want to put that straight. Kim, you mentioned that was already answered. Sorry, Dr. Kim, you mentioned something about, but that's already on separate rules. So going back to the RFP, if I'm not mistaken, on the website, and I think Kim, if I may ask you this question, according to the RFP that was set up, it was on July 24th, 2019 for an auditor. And when I went through your website and looked at all those RFPs, IFBs, it explained who received those contracts, but it was just the auditor, the Deloitte & Touche, which we all know you use Deloitte & Touche, but why wasn't it on the website that you awarded Deloitte & Touche? And the next question is, who decides on the cost? Because if I'm not mistaken, it's the lowest bidder. And did Deloitte & Touche, were they the lowest bidder, or was it somebody else? And why were they hired? And why isn't it on the website?
Hey, Senator Tello.
I can
refer that to the experts because I just do the HR stuff.
Okay. So, well, who does the accounting? Or
please chime in. Paging.
Oh, hi, Greta. Yeah.
Paging.
Hi, Greta. Yeah.
Yes, I can go ahead and answer that question. I think the fact that Deloitte might have not been mentioned as the awarded contractor is just a technical oversight on our part. So Deloitte was the awarded company for the independent auditor. And because it's an RFP, it's actually not based on cost. It's based on how well they're able to perform the services needed for the agency. And when we had the RFP, there were a total of 2 auditors that submitted proposals. And we didn't know, so it opened in July of 2019 and it didn't get awarded until November because there were different challenges that we came across during the evaluation process that took time for us to reach out to the auditors who submitted proposals for us to complete the evaluation process. But once all the documents were submitted and a thorough evaluation was conducted, we went ahead and awarded it to Deloitte & Touche.
Okay, so and probably because I brought that up, you'll probably update your website now because it was since last November. Greta, was Deloitte & Touche a higher bidder than since there were only 2? Were they a higher bidder than the other company?
I'm actually unable to answer that only because whichever our evaluation is based on the proposal, if we selected that proposal, we cannot open the unsuccessful proposal price.
Oh, okay. That's different. Usually it's very transparent, on whenever someone is awarded the cost that you're paying and versus what was provided to everyone. So thank you, Greta. Thank you so much for that information. Mr. Flores, how are you, Mr. Chairman? Thank you so much for sitting through this. Oh, you're muted. You're muted, sir.
I'm back on. Okay, I'm fine, Senator. Hope the same with you.
Okay, same. Yes, please be safe. Mr. Flores, is there anything in law that, when you did the evaluation of the director, was that evaluation written up by you, or did the director write his own evaluation and gave it to you to review? Or did you write that all solely on your own? And did you have another person with you when you were going over his evaluation at the time?
No, this is how it works, Senator. When we conducted the evaluations starting back in January 2020, the forms were provided to each of the commissioners with the standards in those forms. So each commissioner individually evaluated the director. The director is not involved in our our initial evaluations, that the director does have the opportunity to review our evaluations after it's been turned into HR. And he can either agree or disagree. But the evaluations themselves are upon action by individual commissioners, so without any undue influence from the director or deputy director in this case. Any comments provided in those forms are solely the comments of the commissioner that performed those evaluations. And those in turn are turned into HR, Kim Berseman, and she's responsible for compiling the evaluations and determining the final ratings. Yeah. So
okay, and then so there was an evaluation that was supposed to be done 6 months after he's in
Correct.
2019. It was mentioned 6 months, but you guys weren't able to do that.
Yes, no.
In fact, until
Correction.
October, right?
Actually, we did
Go
it in
ahead.
July of 2019 as per the law. We did conduct the initial 6-month evaluation. Yeah.
Okay, you did this, so on time then, you were on time on the 6 months evaluation.
Right.
And then was there an increment given to him during that time?
Not based on the evaluation. No, it was simply to comply with the law that the evaluation be conducted 6 months upon his appointment.
And then he gets an increment or a raise. Did he get a raise at that time?
Not at that time based on the evaluation. The only raises or pay adjustment, whatever you want to call it, tied into an increment is the current one now, the January 2019 period to January 2020, the full year.
Because I was looking at something and it shows that less than 2 years, how many times has this director ever been given a raise or an increment? And it's showing that since the time he's been in there, he's had $22,000 raise since he's been there, and now he wants another $6,000. So how is that? I mean, he received an increment already since he's been. Oh, Kim is about to answer that, Mr. Flores.
Kim,
she's waving her hand. Yeah, she's waving her hand. Go ahead, Kim.
Okay.
Sorry, thank you. I'll take a stab at that. Basically, Senator, what happened in July 8, 2019, well, I'll go back. The position should have moved in January 2019, but for some reason, and we deferred to the board at that time, but the position was needed to be corrected in January 2019. So come July, there was a Section 8 plan the director talked about, that 2.7 million plan. It did a lot of things. Included in that was one, it corrected and restored increments to the positions. And so that captured the director's slotting, correction for that slotting. And then number two, the same thing, we shifted into a new pay schedule, because the last time the pay schedule was ever updated was in 2011. And so in keeping with the Hay consultants and the need to maintenance plan, keep your maintenance plan up to par, we needed to move that. And that's what happened in July 2019. So there's a couple things that happened. So yeah, you're correct. There were 2 adjustments back in July, but we presented that to the board.
Okay, 2 adjustments back in July. Was any of those adjustments made retroactive?
Only the start of the effective date of the board approval, which was July 8, 2019.
Okay, so it is true that since 2019 has been in DOS, he's already had at least 2, and it's a total of $22,000 in raises since that time, correct?
I think.
Just yes or no?
Oh,
yeah. Yes.
16, 8 plus 8, 16.
Yeah, so $16,000, and now this one that's coming up is for another $6,000, correct?
Well, this one now is for the annual salary increment based on our formal performance evaluation system.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kim. Thank you for that. Like Senator Moylan mentioned, he has a bill out there, and we're trying to get as much information as we can as we move forward on to adjust it. So can I go back to Greta? Greta, you're an accountant there at GURA, right?
I'm the procurement staff, actually.
Oh, the procurement. Kim, who's the accountant here? Because since we don't have Deloitte and Touche here, I was hoping, Mr. Chair, that Deloitte and Touche would be here to kind of explain some of the findings that they had in here. Is there somebody in accounting, or maybe Kim, you want to take? Yeah.
Miss Lucille Leon Guerrero is a certified CPA,
Okay. Hi,
one of 3 CPAs.
Okay.
So, Miss
Which
Lucille,
you need, right, and which you need more of. I know. I heard that part. Yeah. So, hi, Lucille. How are you?
Hi, Senator. Yes, I could try to do some of the explanations.
Okay.
I know there were 2 that was brought about earlier. There was one that talked about it's 2019. It's 2019.
Yeah, actually, I'm not going to bring, for the sake of time, I'm not going to bring that up again. I think Senator Moylan pretty much covered that. The one I'm looking at is that Deloitte and Touche's report that they put out. And Deloitte and Touche, there's the report they put out, number 11. It states that the auditee qualified as low risk. That's exactly what it says. It says the auditee qualified as low risk. What exactly does that mean?
Okay, low risk auditee is if you have no, I guess you could say no findings, or you have unqualified opinion for both financials and your and the other one, the compliance report. If you have unqualified opinions for those, I believe it's 2 or 3 years straight in a row, then you're considered a low risk auditee. And I believe there are some agencies out there, to name a few that I recall, I believe is Guam Community College. I believe theirs is up to 12 years of straight unqualified opinions for both financial and for compliance. So in order to actually have a low risk auditee, you actually have to have numerous years of unqualified opinions for both.
But unqualified, if I'm not mistaken, because it is kind of confusing. I'm
it's
usually
clean. Sorry, it's a clean audit, ma'am. It's a clean audit.
That's unqualified or qualified?
Unqualified opinion or unmodified opinion is a clean audit. Modified or qualified opinion, there's some findings.
Okay, so on number 11, it states auditee qualified, not unqualified, qualified as low risk. So it's still really confusing. Yeah, so
as far as I know, based on that, we're not a low risk, ma'am.
Okay,
yeah,
but the Deloitte and Touche, okay. So Deloitte and Touche also mentioned on page 9, according to page 9, number 5 and 6, is there any material weaknesses based on the audit? Was there any material weaknesses?
I know there was some that were said. I mean, I don't know the information off the top of my head, all of it, but
is that the same Senator Moylan was bringing up, Lucia? Is that
there are some? I know he brought up some that stated about like one of it had to do with the procurement that I recall. There's zero question cost for that, even if the procurement is $53,000, because let me just explain that as first is, although it's a finding, because what it is the government of Guam law, I believe, is less than 100,000 as far as that one. Our procurement was 53,000, but our in-house, which we already, how do you say that? We already amended or updated. Originally, it wasn't up at 53,000; it was below 50. So, but since we still follow the overall government-wide procurement, we're still in line. That's why it's not a question cost. So if you look at that it's a zero question cost, but we still had to get a finding for it. Okay. That's what I was explaining.
I see. It still gets a little complicated. So that probably boils down to the last question with regards to the audit with a management letter. Okay. I know that a management letter is given to the agency to basically spell out, right? Lucille, am I right on that? It spells out all the deficiencies. Did you receive one? And is that one out?
Yes, ma'am. We did receive a management letter. There's a few comments on the management letter comments. So on a management letter comments, they give like stuff that are not considered, at least my opinion, that are not considered a finding. But we have to pretty much respond to it. It's either like the first one is what Mr. Taposnia said, our director, that regarding that, there's information that was placed there that they told us that we either, it's in the books correctly, it's recorded, but it's been there for over a couple years. Some of them has been there before I even started in this agency. So the question is, do you amend it or correct it or take it off the books because it's no longer, or it's already paid for? So that's something we need to decide.
Okay.
I'm sorry?
Lucy, can we get a copy of that? Has that been sent to us?
The management letter comment?
Mr. Chair, Senator San Agustin requests that this management report be given to the senators to review.
Yes, ma'am. Actually, it can be found on the OPA website. I've got it there, and the audit was released on, I believe, August 12. I want to say it's August 12. So you could scan through there. I was able to get mine there because I don't actually, get a full copy of the audit. I just access it off our internet. Yes.
Lucille,
Yes,
stand
sir.
by Senator Tello. Lucille, are you referring to page 29 on the OPA report that Mr. Tapasna responded to the OPA? Is that what you're referring to? The letter that the guru responded to?
Letter
OPA?
comment. The management.
That's correct.
Yes, it's
right.
Here, let me show you. Sorry, I don't have it, but well, I have my. I don't know if you guys could see it. This is the management letter comment, and let me look for the page. I'm so sorry, I can't share screen, but there's a few here that they say this can be accessed on the OPA website. It's 5 pages.
Okay. Yeah,
We'll
Mr. Chair,
pull it up. I'll ask my colleagues to pull it up.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, that is from Deloitte & Touche. It's not from OPA or from GURA. It's directly from Deloitte & Touche. Okay, just a couple more questions. Okay, do you think excessive? Okay, that one. Okay, Mr. Tapashnia, you mentioned earlier, I think, when you talked about Dan Fitzgerald, you talked about 7 autonomous agencies. I believe what he meant was that GITA was one of 7 autonomous agencies, not that I believe, what you said about the agencies. I just wanted to go back to that because that's not true what you said on that part. But speaking of truth, Mr. Tapashnia, I have to ask you, we all respect Senator B.J. Cruz, former Senator B.J. Cruz, and most especially a former judge, and he said to you, he said, and I quote, that you were a liar, that Mr. Tapashnia, you are a liar and that you do this with a straight face. What do you have to say about that?
Excuse me, Senator San Agustin, I thought this wasn't going to be about personal attacks.
Can you mute her? Can you mute her, please?
Yes. Stand by, Ray.
The last time this happened, I filed an ethics complaint. Oversight Chair.
Right. No, we're gonna move on. Senator Tello, that's not acceptable. I gave fair warning. Personal influence as to the character or motive of any individual is not permitted. Okay, Tello, that's enough. We're not going to go through this no more.
But thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity anyways. Thank you so much. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Senator Sabina, do you have any questions you want to ask on the agenda of number 1?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just I remember sitting through a procurement class with some of the GURA professionals there, and yes, thank you to all of you that are here. And I remember hearing from them about how they had a clean audit. And so, fast forward for today, recently, it was kind of a surprise to me to see that, all the issues that are coming up. So in regards to the OPA audit, would that have any bearing on HUD in regards to their assessment? That question is for Director Tapasnia. So I guess my concern is, would the recent OPA audit have any bearing on how HUD views GURA?
The simple answer is any findings in an audit, HUD pays very close attention to. As I mentioned in my presentation, we implemented corrective action on 24 prior year audit findings. That was before our time. So unfortunately, there were two new ones that I can think of that we would have to, that we're in the process of implementing corrective action on. Those are not, as the controller mentioned, those are not audit findings that are that they're negligible. And in one particular case, and I really ask the senators to take a look at all the audits, because you will have management letters to the respective management. You will have a letter to their board of directors. Our audit is no different from any other audit. But going in response to your question, yes, there's a couple of findings that we will need to address, and but the findings are more, and you know, I don't want to, this thing, we've been at this for now 2 hours and 15 minutes. In one particular case, the auditors are saying, hey, you should have charged a set amount of money for rent, and we were charging something different. Their interpretation of the regs is slightly different from ours. It's not a big deal. We will take corrective action. In another particular case, well, your files are in disarray, or this particular file we looked at is missing a document. The document, unfortunately, was filed in another file. Is it an audit finding when it comes to federal compliance? Yes. Would it be an audit finding in another agency? Probably not. And so, yeah, I mean, we're not a perfect organization. There's going to be findings, but we try our best. And when I say these are personal attacks, I'm not the one doing the work, and Liz is not doing the work. It's our team. So when anybody at the Guam legislature or the OPA starts attacking the good work that my team is doing, then you're attacking my team, not me. I'm just the captain of the ship. I don't actually file those documents, but I would expect with 101, 102 employees now that we will make mistakes. And when we make mistakes, it's my job. I take full responsibility. It's my job to ensure that we don't make those same mistakes in the future. But if you look at 24 corrective action measures taken on prior year audits, and then 2 new ones that amount to question costs of 0.010, you know, I really wish the last 2 hours and 15 minutes I would actually be working on trying to improve on the organization, rather than trying to explain things that any auditor, any certified public accountant will tell you guys it's negligible. But yes, we will try our best to make those corrections.
Okay, that's good to hear, because yeah, when I see certain things like no proper recording of properties worth 706,000, you know, like you said, that was a new thing, but you know, that to me is a cause of concern. So I'm really glad to hear that you're willing to do corrective action on the OPAs based on what the audit findings were. So yeah, thank you for, you know, I look forward to, you know, much correction in these areas. In regards to, you know, personnel, I think, you know, I'm glad that, you know, we got to hear the presentation from Dr. Berseman, and but I think, you know, if you look at the greater political context, right, and this, you know, this goes beyond the pandemic even, you know, this idea that, you know, people are struggling, and so how can we best utilize the money? I mean, is it within your power to basically say no to the pay raise because, you know, for the sake of, you know, morale, and for, you know, to kind of maybe shuffle that money towards the much needed services? And thank you for, by the way, for the rent relief, the mortgage relief, rent relief program that you have. But is it within your power to basically say no to the pay raises? You know, as a gesture towards the community, I'm going to put that money towards more rent relief. Is that within your power to do that? This goes for Director Tapasnia and Ms. Napoli.
Well, if I can just respond to that in very simply, no, it's not within my power. The board decides what to pay me. I could tell the board that I prefer not to take the salary increment. But no, it's not within my authority to deviate from anything that the board approves, but I could certainly, in terms of it operationally, I can tell HR, which I have, not to process it.
I'm sorry, can you repeat that last thing you said?
I said it operationally, I can instruct HR and fiscal not to process it, but I cannot go against a board ratification, if that's what you're suggesting.
May I add also, Sabina, part of your question also had to do with if we could take those funds and put it into other, give it to the people that are suffering out there, et cetera. The controller can probably expand on this, but we can't just move funds around like that. There's a cost center for every single thing that's done here at GURA. So you can't take what's in the central office cost center and give it to Section 8, or give it to public housing, or give it to CPD programs. There are different cost centers for every single penny that's spent here at GURA. So it's not a matter of just not taking the salary increment and taking it and giving it to Section 8, low-income families, or public housing low-income families, or the homeless. It's not as simple as that. And our controller might be able to expound on that. Kathy and the community development program could expound on that, but funds are not just switched around like that.
And if I can add to that, similarly, we're not able to tap from Section 8. I can't touch public housing and say I'm going to give myself a raise. GURA is very structured. If I was at the airport, I certainly could take, or at the port, I certainly can take money from operations and move it to administration, and vice versa. It's not as easy with GURA. We're very structured. We follow HUD regs. It's, I wish, because our funding in central office is derived primarily from management fees. So I wish we had more money so we can just hire accountants whenever somebody says we're short on accountants. But we're short. We're a very lean operation. We have 102 employees and an $81 million budget. That's unheard of. Everything we do is based on, is similar to what you would see in any other housing authority. The difference between GURA and other housing authorities is, and you can do your research. Housing authorities typically handle Section 8 or public housing, or Section 8 and public housing, but you're not going to see a housing authority handle Section 8 public housing, CDBG, home, ESG, low-income housing tax credits, and all of that stuff all under one roof. So we're very unique in a sense, and what that creates, because everything falls under one roof, is two separate accounting systems that we have to oversee. So when we get criticized because we don't have enough accountants, not a lot of people want, or not a lot of accountants want to go to an organization where you're constantly challenged because you have two accounting software. My hat's off to my controller and to everybody in my fiscal department, simply because the challenges are great. And in response to Senator Tello Taitigui saying that the audit, interpreting what the auditor said, she wasn't even here. She wasn't here at the board meeting. I was here, so were all the managers, so was the entire board. And what we were told is doing the GURA audit was similar to doing 7 autonomous agencies. I don't know how she responded when I don't even know whether she zoomed in or but she certainly wasn't present. So, are these personal attacks? Yes, you're not even present.
Senator Tello, you're not being recognized, please. No comment. Senator Sabina, would you complete your questions, please, so we can move along? Thank you.
Yeah, just one last question for Dr. Berseman. So earlier you mentioned something about there has to be some reevaluation in regards to compensation for employees, and considering that GURA is federally funded, what do you see coming down the pipeline in regards to this? And how do you reconcile the local initiatives like the Hayes study with the federal protocols?
Hi, Senator, nice to meet you. So I'll answer your first question. Okay. with respect to, I think we're going to need, the reality is globally, the pandemic has caused so much economic loss. Everybody has to reassess their business numbers and the priorities, and that's worldwide. And so with the federal government's deficit pre-COVID, I believe I was watching like 23 trillion, and now with all this CARES Act and it's ballooning. I can't even keep track of where it's at. So with respect to that, we're 100% federally funded. I think we're going to need to buckle our belts, like any organization's going to do. It's going to be rough waters, and so we'll see how that goes and how we reconcile with DOA. That's one of the reasons why we kind of broke apart, was because we couldn't really afford the entry-level salaries that jumped in the 2010 or 2011 study, and then when the 2014. And so our compensation methodology is based on 3 R's: recruit, reward, and retain. And so we had to do it in a gradual phase of what we can afford and can we afford ourselves. And with the board's broad powers, they can do that. So we have a lot ahead to look at. So I think it's just buckle up. It's going to be for some tough times ahead for, I think, everybody worldwide. So I hope that kind of answers your question.
Yeah, thank you for that. So this question's for Chairman Sabino, similar namesake. Yeah, so regards to the budget, when is that prepared when does the board prepare the budget for GORA? Is it the same fiscal year as the government-wide agencies, or is it does it follow a different time?
Yeah, it's actually manager that prepares the budget, and then it's presented to the board in the September timeframe for the following fiscal year. So I may have to defer that question to Secretary when he said actually prepare, but the board's role is to approve it, not to prepare it. Yeah.
Okay, so that would be Director Tapasnia who prepares it, or is it somebody else?
Right. Well, he and the fiscal section. Yeah.
The fiscal section, and that would be who? Oh, okay. So yeah.
If I may, the budget's actually prepared in consultation with all the managers. So it's this particular budget, we were because of COVID, didn't get as much input, if I can say, from everybody. But typically, the process is for all the managers to provide their input. And we did that more via electronically, more so than meetings.
Okay, and so that was right in the middle of the pandemic, so it's obvious that their pay increments were agreed to, or I guess it's a process that is commonly done with GORA, but being that the pandemic is here and it's causing a lot of displacement of our workers and difficulty in paying housing. Was there what was the decision based on pay raises versus looking at the long term? So this is an exercise that we did as a legislature too. We had to kind of rein in on our expenditures, and I'm just wondering, with the pay increments, was that question in regards to continuing with pay increments considering the pandemic?
I can respond to that. The increments are budgeted for unless there's a law or unless there's an executive order that would direct GORA to put a moratorium. Doesn't necessarily mean that we have to proceed, and that would be entirely up to the board. Or if legislation is adopted. But yeah, I mean, the increments are in the FY21 budget that was passed by the board, and that was because these increments, if someone, again, they're for the period prior to even the passage of this budget. So you can't tell someone for FY20 or January 2019 to January 2020 that they're not entitled to an increment for a period that was pre-COVID, you can't, the board and I certainly won't say you're not entitled to it. So yeah, the board can decide moving forward that we can place a moratorium on increments, but you would, as Kimberly mentioned, you would be facing legal challenges if you were to make a decision that you're not entitled to an increment pre-COVID.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Sabina Barris. Now, Ray and Mr. Tapasna and Mr. Sabino Flores, you know, on the agenda, we have number 2, COVID-19 mortgage and rent relief programs. Number 3, federally funded programs to prevent combat homelessness. And number 4, government assisted living facility. Ray, I would probably assume that Ray's going to take care of that, right, Mr. Flores? Ray? So Ray, can you go ahead and just wrap all 3 up as one and just present us everything that covers all 3? Okay, because they all relate to each other, okay?
They are, and you know, Kathy Taitano is our chief planner, and she can probably speak to this even more clearly than I can. Basically, we received some the first allocation of $3.5 million in CARES Act money. Then we received the second allocation of $2.6 million. The first allocation we're in the process. We're days away from actually spending down on some of these funds with respect to the mortgage relief program. We've awarded, I think, $714,000 to Guam Housing Corp. And we're down to, I believe, and Kathy, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're down to just the subrecipient agreement. All the other documents are already fully executed. So once we do that, Guam Housing Corp is ready to proceed with giving out or paying down on as many as 200 plus, 206, I believe, mortgage holders of low to mod income families. Then there's the rent relief that we've partnered up with the Salvation Army, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but Kathy can probably chime in on that. And then we also have about a little over $1 million where we partner with Catholic Social Service. And then lastly, we have some money that we awarded to Manetlu for a jobs training program. But Kathy, are you there? Maybe you want to talk about the details specifically.
I'm here, sir.
Thank you.
Okay. Senators, I'm Kathy Taitano. I am the chief planner with GORA. My section generally runs CDBG Community Development Block Grant and Home Investment Partnership Grants and the Emergency Solutions Grants. The CARES Act monies that came in through HUD came in for Community Development Block Grant and the Emergency Solutions Grant. GORA has received an authorization for 3 rounds of CDBG COVID monies and 2 rounds of Solutions Grant monies. We have committed for projects totaling about 34% of the entire amount of monies that we have received over the 3 allocation cycles. And the director was correct. He was speaking of the CDBG funding that is going towards the projects that we selected. Sir, you're correct. The mortgage relief program in particular is under subrecipient agreement review by their council and to be our council as well, so that we can get that out. But all of the other steps that have to happen in there are done. Their policy is written, their SOP is correct. We've done their environmental review, and that's just to say that there are a number of steps that have to be taken. The crux of award is to prepare, prevent, or respond to COVID on island. So the projects are vetted under those determinations. We have put aside $714,000 presently for rent relief, mortgage relief. They roughly estimate being able to assist 207 individuals who meet an income threshold requirement of 80% of the island's area median income as established by HUD. The rest of the money is going towards rent relief and additional monies for the a food pantry. And then there is a retraining program for those who lost their jobs as a result of COVID. Then we have specifically put all of the emergency solutions grant money towards rent relief. That's $888,000. And that is for folks who are 50% of area median income and below. So these folks are folks that were already at the at a very much more modest level of total income for a household. And so we have different thresholds. We have different levels of what we're trying to dish out to the public through, not through us directly, but through our partners like the Guam Housing Corporation, and then the efforts of Catholic Social Service and the Salvation Army and Manyetlu, which used to be Big Brothers, Big Sisters on Guam. That's where we are at this point.
Thank you very much, Ms. Titano. Oh, there you are, Mr. Chair, you're back.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice. Thank you, Ms. Titano. So that would generally cover, gosh, the mortgage and rent relief programs, federally funded programs, homelessness and government assisted living facilities. Am I correct, Kathy?
It takes care of direct assistance to families. I'm gonna get a little technical on the rent relief, only because that money goes directly to the organization,
right?
Certainly to help them boost their bolster their operations in order to move the money, and then the money itself directly to families to be provided assistance of up to 3 months to address the potential for homeless prevention. So to prevent them, or to provide them with assistance, to keep them from housing, or to get them rehoused immediately. You know, let's say you needed it's called in front of you guys. I know I don't know this, and right in my I've got staff probably watching me going, "What are you doing?" It will provide us the opportunity to help keep you in your home, or to help get you back into your home, and that get you back into your rental unit, or a rental unit that is then more affordable for what you need. We don't know how long this thing is going to last, but we are pushing the maximum assistance levels for the individuals that we can, and we're very conscious that it's possible that when we see this money start walking out the door and assisting people, that we will have it in our ability to put more monies towards these programs if they are working well for the community.
How about, Kathy, government assisted living facilities? Would that be related to what? What would that cover?
Government assisted living facilities.
There's a combination of things you're probably thinking of, I know.
Yeah, well, there are various levels, right from because you mentioned homelessness. So some of the struggles that we've been having as a community are to stand up right now emergency shelters that we have not had, and to do so in order to kind of try and assist and to prevent folks from getting sick. There are monies that can be used to do those and to run those operations, but one of the concerns and the things that we have to make certain of is one of them is that we're using the funds in a sustainable way, that it is going to be able to last past COVID, and that there is a tangible plan that we who can provide monies maybe more immediately. We recognize that there's going to be a long-term need for funds to keep these programs going, or to keep these facilities open. So a lot of times it's easy to start it, but for it to not have a sustainable source afterwards is the challenge. but we're absolutely, pouring through the guidance that we're getting, which is voluminous, because we get to look at what other jurisdictions are doing for their communities and see what works and what might not work. We are very conscious that the need has shifted and the guidance has adapted over the months. And no one would know that we would still be here 9 months after. I think I'm counting from from March, thereabouts. But we're gonna start these programs quite soon. I've got agreements being worked out. My staff is working out agreements so that we can start moving these monies into the hands of the service providers. We
All right.
also have 2 more rounds of funding that we are going to be looking at for new projects. So Gora will be, and the director has mentioned in the past, that we will be going out to look for new projects that we can move monies with, but they have to respond. It's prepare, prevent, and respond to COVID. So the questioning always has to say, how are we addressing the pandemic issues on Guam?
All right, thank you. Senator Amanda, do you have any questions on the remaining 3 issues on the agenda?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Ms. Taitino, for that information. The last point that we talked about was the government-assisted living facilities. And Mr. Tapasnia, if you can just elaborate a little bit about, I think some of the comments that I heard in the media regarding Guma Tranquilidad again, and some of the ideas floating around about what kind of assisted living facilities you have in mind and perhaps are moving in the direction of developing. Can you help us better understand that?
Yes, and thank you, Senator. As you know, the governor, via executive order, reconstituted the Interagency Council on Homelessness, of which I was appointed along with the Guam Housing Corporation, GRTA, and the governor as well appointed other members to the council. But in one of our council meetings, I believe it was Dr. Uchima from UOG who had raised the issue that the Guam lacks an assisted living facility, and it's very critical that we have one. What I said during the meeting is Gura's got properties that we can certainly leverage so we can build this assisted living facility. And I did share my ideas with KUAM at one point, and it just completely blossomed out of control, to the point where, unfortunately, the residents at Guma Tranquilidad were being threatened that they were going to be booted out when that wasn't even the case. But the point I'm trying to make is Gura's got assets that if we all come together collectively and figure out whether it's the highest and best use, it doesn't have to be Guma Tranquilidad. We've been talking to HUD about repositioning. We have 750 public housing units from Deredo down to Maritzo that some of them are 40 years old, some of them much older. And I don't know in 10 years from now whether we're going to be able to continue with a small budget from HUD, whether it's sustainable moving forward. So some of the things that HUD wants us to pursue is what they call RAD conversion, where we would convert our public, I don't want to get too technical, but basically you'll be converting from public housing to Section 8. So the 750 families would receive a Section 8 voucher as opposed to be living as opposed to being in public housing. So there's a lot of things that are coming down the pipe that we're talking to HUD about. There's a lot of things that we're just discussing internally. Maybe some of the things that we've done for decades are not the best practices, or will not result in the best outcomes. I don't have all the answers. I need guidance from you folks. I know there was a law passed that would prevent Gura from ever selling Guma Tranquilidad. But I still believe in deep down inside that we can, for the greater good, we can certainly build hundreds, maybe thousands of units by leveraging that property. But I don't get to make that call. That call will be ultimately be made by the lawmakers and the board and the governor. But I certainly will put that out there because I can't see property down in Tumon that's worth tens of millions of dollars. We have 49 residents there, but we have 4,500 plus on our wait list. So it's my job not to prioritize just the 49, but to look at ways where I can help, the greater community. And if I'm just going to be same old, then I certainly expect the board to reevaluate me. But I'm always pushing forward new ideas, new agendas, and hopefully we're able to move forward on some of these things so we can address. We house 4,882, including our LIHTC properties. That's Section 8 public housing, Guma Tranquilidad, and low-income housing tax credits. But we have over 4,500 on our wait list. So, do we just continue to tell the 4,500 some people that call, that email us every day, when am I going to get a home? Or do we try and get creative and figure out a better way to do more with less? So that's where I'm coming from. And, it may be politically incorrect, but, I just want to remind everyone, I don't get to make that final call. Everything I do, I need to get the board's approval. And ultimately, we need to comply with Guam law, and Guam law says we can't sell the property. So, when people get bent out of shape, we're not going to violate the law. The law says we can't sell it, so we can't sell it. But I certainly would like our lawmakers to help GURA do more for the people, for the folks that are the 4,500, many of them with a disability, many of them elderly, that are just hoping and praying that something new will come along.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Tapasnia, for that clarification and for thinking outside of the box. I do appreciate that as much as it does excite our residents at Guma Tranquilidad and our stakeholders who want to see that piece of property preserved as the tranquil area meant for the golden years of life for our residents who are there. I understand that we need to think out of the box to help the greater population and come to that conclusion together as a community with GORA, with the legislature, and I appreciate that. The chairman and I have been working on legislation to help move us in that direction. Also to help with our senior housing issues and the greater GORA wait list. So hopefully in the next couple of days we can introduce that and work together with you, Mr. Director, and with the whole team at GORA to get that moving.
And thank you, Senator. And if I can just add one more thing, after all the bad press we got on Guma Trank, my first month on the job, 3-4 days later, there was a storm, and a small one, but the storm surge came up closer than normal to the residents, and there were multiple 911 calls, and the governor's office had called me and said, everybody's panicking down there, you got to do something. I went down there and I spent almost the whole evening with some of the residents down there. So is it, them being so close to the water, does that, am I gravely concerned about that? Yeah, I got a lot of, again, personal attacks because I shared some of my ideas regarding highest and best use. And then I ended up spending the evening trying to bring some comfort level to them, and that I would be there to make that call to civil defense to have them evacuated if need be. So, it all has, my wife's aunt actually passed away back in 2012 at Guma Tranquilidad because of the tsunami alert. And that's why it's very near and dear to me. Everybody thinks that all I'm thinking about is the business side. No, I actually had a relative that passed because we could not evacuate the 49 residents in a timely manner. So a few of them were left behind. I think we evacuated 47 of them. 2 of them did not want to go. They didn't want to cooperate, and their families didn't respond accordingly. And one of them passed due to cardiac arrest. And so I always said when I came, if I were able to come back to GORA, I would try and do what's right, and that's basically move them to a safer location, give them the amenities that they deserve. You know, if you look at a lot of senior housing in the States, there's recreational facilities, there's a medical facility, there's everything that they can dream of, and they don't have that at Guma Tranquilidad. They have a peaceful place to live the rest of their life, but a peaceful place that's not peaceful when a typhoon comes our way. So that's
for that, Mr. Director. Yeah, there are very many considerations to make, whether that is the safest place for us to house our older population, and what we can do to better protect them and allow them to age in place peacefully wherever that may be. So I appreciate that. And I wanted to say thank you very much to your staff and the whole team for your work at Guma Tranquilidad, because since that, a lot of excitement at the beginning of the term, I got to spend a lot of time with the seniors down there and meet your staff who are taking care of them on a daily basis, who check in on them and take care of all of their needs. And so you have a very responsive team who is doing a great job down there, and the residents, have a lot of great things to say about them. So thank you very much to all of you.
All right, thank you, Madam Vice. I see Senator Lee has not gotten back. I know that she said she was going to come back. We're going to move along. We have Senator Louise Muna. I know she had an appointment. Senator Kelly Marsh, title, ma'am. Do you have any questions for the remaining three on the agendas? 3 items on the agenda.
Suzuis Masi, Mr. Chair. First I want to mention that I really appreciate hearing about the relief programs. We know that since the beginning, the community has really been seeking as much of this as possible. Rent and mortgage are among the highest, if not the highest, that of those monthly bills that comes up for everybody. And so it's really weighed heavily on people's minds and concerns. So it's so good to see that this program is getting underway and that we have been able to offer some relief. Of course, we're always going to look for what we can to advocate for more. I did have a question, and so I'm trying to go through it about the program, the low income units that are maintained. So what is the difference in qualifying for Guam housing and Guam rental units? If we could understand that a little bit to just kind of understand the landscape of what's going on in GURA.
I think the simple answer to that, Senator, is GURA's got to follow federal regs, HUD regulations and guidelines, and Guam Housing Corp does not. They don't receive money from HUD, with the exception of this, the mortgage relief now. Indirectly, they were awarded $714,000, but no, none of their units have to fully conform to federal guidelines. We do, all 750 of them, and all 50 down at Guma Tranquilidad. So, I mean, if you, we have one of our property site managers, if you want to ask technical questions as to what those guidelines are. But the difference is local regs versus federal regs.
Okay, I mean, that provides some understanding because they are different landscapes, if you will. So I'm working on a further question with that. If I could come back to that, Mr. Chair, I just want to understand this issue a little bit more so that I can ask the question that I'm seeking.
Okay, we will have time for that, Senator Kelly. Senator Jim Mullen, I know I saw you there. There you go. Do you have any questions or you're good? Okay, great. Senator Therese, I still see your nameplate. Are you still here or you're out?
Yes, I'm here. I only have one question, Mr. Chair, and that is—
Go for it.
So
Go
Catherine,
for it, Senator Therese.
Catherine, you talked about you talked about the rental relief program. You're going to dedicate $888,000 to it. And it would provide for 3 months of assistance. So what is the amount and how many people do you intend to serve with that? And 888 is the two increment, the two rounds?
No. In fact, 888,000 is just what is going to be dedicated to from the Emergency Solutions Grant. There's another slightly over $500,000 coming from the Community Development Block Grant. The difference between the two is the threshold for who can receive assistance. The Emergency Solutions helps people at 50% of area median and below. And the Community Development Block Grant helps folks at 80% of area median and below. And there are ways to divvy this up so that you can maximize the utility. And you would think that folks at the very lowest level would be more greatly impacted by losses in wages to try and maintain their housing, their current housing. And therefore, we might actually, it's possible that the conversations could be to segregate the money so that one program helps you if you're up to 50 and the other one helps you from 50 to 80. The numbers of people are really a measure of what was put forth in the applications from the organizations that were providing assistance. And we roughly kind of, they looked at it and they know what their typical client is like and what is necessary. And so they're looking at, gosh, in total, there must have been over 500, but really it will depend on the individual need of the household. For example, for the mortgage relief, we all know that mortgages are, we could probably roughly go around $1,000 to $1,200.
Not the mortgage relief program. That one you guys have provided details. Is this rental relief program?
The rental relief is the same situation. It's just that the price point might not be as high as the mortgagors. So maybe we're looking between $900 and $1,100 per family or per household. I mean, it really depends on who the individual is that comes in, because you've got folks, one person who's lost his job. A one-person household would be somebody around about $22,750. So, but a family, who we help is what we're trying to figure out. So a one person has got to be having a smaller unit. He or she's not going to necessarily have a 3-bedroom house or renting a 3-bedroom house, but a family of 4 might. And so we kind of look at who we can help on that count. And we are looking at, if I recall correctly, we were looking at some of the program folks looking to assist somewhere in the neighborhood of 500 people. 500 households.
And how soon?
How soon? The environment. We've got documents that are waiting for signatures, and my staff is finalizing subrecipients. I would say perhaps another couple of weeks. I still need to speak to the service providers and all, which has been just one more thing to do and all the other things to do, but it's front burner apart from a couple of it's on the front burner. So most of the stuff's been accelerated since we got approval, or we were preparing even before we got the approvals.
Okay, so a couple of weeks you'll be able to distribute this, but people are not going to apply separately to you. They're going to be working through Catholic Social Services or Salvation Army to get this relief. Okay, all right. Yes. Thank you.
Welcome.
All right, thank you, Senator Therese. Senator Sabina Perez. I saw you there. There you go. You have any questions, ma'am, on the last 3 items on the agenda? And you'll be followed by Senator Tello.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question about sustainability. I remember Ms. Taitano, you were mentioning about how you were thinking about sustaining these programs. Maybe it's a little too soon to talk about this, but what are your ideas to ensure that this program can continue beyond the immediate relief?
That is a challenge that I wish I could tell you I had an idea for, because the thing is that um, we have this island, we're a very small community, and we do have um, some really very active, very very industrious nonprofits, and much of the money that we have a saying at Gura, in my section, that we may be bringing in the funds, but we are not necessarily the right folks to move the monies to the people who need it. And when we look at the different things that the community needs, if we're talking about the thing that the chairman was speaking of, and that is the idea of like a government assisted facility. There are elements of that our funding can pay for, but after that, there's always a partnership involved. So whether the partner is Public Health's BOSA program or BOSA division, Bureau of Support Services, and those guys, or the folks that we help if they have perhaps some disability issues, we really need to know who's going to be the one at the end of the day to open the door and to lock the door and to keep the power on. We've often had the easiest. We've done the hard part. We've done a lot of brick and mortar projects to provide the facilities for the community through GovGuam and through nonprofits. But at the end of the day, we leave and somebody else has got to keep that thing going, because there is not enough money to do ongoing operational support. Our grants are not built for long-term operational support, except for COVID, where I'm allowed, because of the way they restructured the monies for the COVID relief, that they are almost 100% public service related. I don't have to build brick and mortar. We can do it straight up for support services and direct assistance to families. But at the end, we need to be able to know that our infrastructure here, our personnel and our physical and operational infrastructure will be able to be here after that happens.
All right, thank you so much for that input. Appreciate that. Appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Senator Tello, do you have any other questions for the remaining 3 items that are on the agenda?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. Kathy, when I heard you about how much thick of documents that you have to go through, it's horrendous, the kind of, going through each program that you do. It's my hat's off to you and kudos, because you're helping a lot of people, and there are so many people out there appreciate what you're doing. So I want to thank you for that very much. There was a section here that was talked about the rent relief, but you said food pantry and then lost jobs. Can you explain to me how does that work on the lost jobs? I mean, we're always hearing about Department of Labor, providing assistance, unemployment assistance. And so how is GURA doing? What are they doing on the lost job section?
Well, I'll tell you, we are doing, we have the easy part. We're going to, we had Manyatlu, who were, it is their name, but they're still formerly Big Brothers and Big Sisters until everybody gets the word. And Manyatlu folks have stepped in to do, they want to take we're going to be providing them with support. So this is an organizational support question where they will then have people go out to connect people with who have lost their jobs or who have had reduced wages, to prepare themselves for trying to get a new job. And we actually would we do hope that they will still be able to connect with, say, through possibly the University of Guam, so that we can maybe get them sort of steered into the types of work that is necessary to respond to COVID. There's a good training opportunity over there. I wish we moved as fast as UOG does. They've been fantastic, and I've got nothing but good things to say for them. But while we're still mining the opportunities, we have some already here on Guam, and that's one of them. They didn't ask for much money, but as I said, we've got 2 more. We've got a round or 2 more that might go if they start taking off well.
That's good to hear. How much money have you been awarded to the Big Brothers Big Sisters?
Theirs is a rather modest $64,000 and slightly over $64,000.
Okay, yeah, I hope that second round it does, because it looks like a good opportunity to also retrain our community. A lot of them have lost their jobs in the tourist industry, and we need to go back to do a different type of training for them. It was mentioned earlier, 3.5 on CARES Act money, and then it went to 2.6 in CARES Act money that was brought in, and so that's a total of 6.1 million. How much of that has been spent?
Well, none spent is, this is just for CDBG and ESG. This is just for our CDBG and ESG monies. We received a total of 3 allocations for the CDBG program. That total on its own is $4.45 million. And then the Emergency Solutions Grant monies came in at about 3.5. So all total, we will be moving 7.9 into community programs and projects. We have committed, we have gotten approvals. Let me do that right. We have gotten approvals through our applications, and we've gotten approval for HUD for the expenditure, for the projects for $2.6 million of that, and that's 34% of the funding. So in the next few months, we're going to be going out to find other projects that we want to address, or we might be looking to move some of that money into the existing ones once they start to get rolling.
And then you mentioned that you're looking for the second round. When is that anticipated again?
It's actually so very fluid right now in order to respond as quickly as possible. So a lot of it is working with the existing, the work of the Governor's Interagency Council on Homelessness, for one, and the community partners who tell us what is necessary, and then to try to find the right organizations to run it, because the ones we are calling on are quite involved already, and they've got a bunch on their backs as it is.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Kathy, for all your hard work, and everybody at GORA. I really greatly appreciate all the good work you're doing for our
Thank you for mentioning the folks at GORA, because yeah, they're spending a goodly amount of time hard at work, despite the PCOR one. Thank you.
Absolutely. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right, thank you, Senator Tello. At this time, again, I want to thank everyone for attending this roundtable and for providing feedback and suggestion. Thank you, Ray and Liz, Director and Deputy Director, and Mr. Chair, Mr. Sabino Flores, and with your commissioners, Monica and George. Thank you for participating today. And if there's anything else you want to provide to me, please feel free. Just send me the documents, and then I'll spread it among the senators so they can be aware of exactly what's going on. And then I'd like to also recognize, thank you, Catherine Taitunu Molly. That's a nice last name. Very great name, Taitunu. And then you got Julie Lohan there, a fellow biker of mine, good friend of mine, Julie. Take care of Tony, Julie. But anyway, folks, thank you. And for my colleagues for participating, I think we did a great roundtable. And this roundtable meeting is now adjourned. The time now is 5:05. Please be safe, take care, and stay healthy with your family. You all have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.